West Coast Avengers. West Coast Avengers. Ah! Ah! Hello.
How do you not get fired up for that?
I'm fired up in my pants actually.
Is that how you truly feel? Because I'm gonna tell you something right now. If I was walking down a dark alley and some guy was doing that, you know what I would do?
You'd go.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
Yeah. All right. Welcome into SunDAVE Sit Down. And let's not even bury the lead. Let's introduce my guest for the night, and then I'll ramble on. First, over there, we've got East Bay Comics, a.k.a. my sister and Moses. And down there, the man from down south, he's almost from the bayou, Nick the Nerds Pub. What's going on, fellas?
What up?
So pumped to be here.
Well, that's fantastic. I totally forgot to do the one thing that I said I was going to do and put your Instagram account links in the description. I forgot.
All good.
So you know.
All good. I'm actually, you know what? Just because you did that, let me go ahead and delete my account, right? Delete it. We're good. You don't have to anymore. You're good. I don't have one.
All right. There we go.
Thank you for having us on, man. This is going to be fun.
It is. And if you're watching this live, which it says there's nobody in the room, so apparently it's just the three of us. I think maybe my channel got canceled today. But that's besides the point.
It was the O's hat.
Yeah.
They're trash.
It was the fact that I ended today's video with a "fuck you," and then I said, and then Comic Tim comes in.
That would have been a great time to come in right there.
Yeah. Yeah, we're so all right. Straight face. It is SunDAVE Sit Down, and we have reached that point of the month where it is the book club, the Dave Ventures book club, and we are going to be talking about the greatest Wolverine story of all time. Marvel Comics presents Wolverine Weapon X. Yeah, see,
I don't know. I think you two have it. I like your guys' cover a little bit more.
I think that's the same. There you go.
Well, me and you have the same.
I like
shirt.
Is that 88? Which one is that?
Oh, this one is 79 and 72.
72.
Yeah. But this is weird. I gotta say that nobody's in here. I literally don't know if I'm even live. So let's just check while we're sitting here. But yes, it is the SunDAVE Book Club. And this is the time where we talk about a story that I've picked out. Yep, nope, it does not. We're not live.
So I just got a notification now that you went live. So maybe other people also got the notification.
Yeah, maybe it's on some weird time delay or something. All right.
Mr. No Love is in here.
Oh yeah, all right. No Love's in here. Okay, cool. We're officially live. So there we go. So it's SunDAVE Dave Venture Book Club, Barry Windsor Smith's Weapon X. But before we get to that, once again, East Bay Comics on Instagram. And the Nerds Pub on Instagram. Two gentlemen that I've never met you, Nick, in person, but we've been acquainted for over a year now.
If I ever make it to the West Coast, we'll change it.
And if I ever make it to the South, that I'm not going to Florida, because that's the only place. It's the only place I go to visit my parents in the South. But these two gentlemen are comic book lovers, just like everybody watching and everybody that isn't watching. You get it? All right. So sorry, I lost everything. A couple of things.
I'm trying to post a link right now to my Instagram real quick. I'm sorry about that, guys.
Okay. Don't forget to watch the video I dropped this morning. I'll give you a little bit of an insight into the books that are coming up in the Dave Venture Book Club, including a personal shout out to you, Nick. I held up God Country and I said, Nick wants to do this, and so we're gonna do it.
I saw it and I was ready.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. You're gonna just have to crack that out of the slab. But,
crack that joint.
Speaking of, I know there's only a couple people in here, but I'm gonna give this away at some point tonight. And this is a Marvel Comics Presents 72, 8.5 newsstand. as just a little, token to say thank you to the people that actually took the time to read the book and took the time to hang out. So look for that giveaway later on tonight. Somebody might have to remind me.
That's
But
awesome giveaway.
thank you. All right. So book club, blah, blah, blah. Every Wednesday, West Coast Wednesday. And don't forget, there's a big announcement coming in. I'll talk about it just a little bit right now, but you guys know next month, April 22nd, 23rd, we're going to be doing the first ever online YouTube Davenger Con. And what that's going to consist of is some of my friends who are trusted sellers and some of my friends who are just, like comic book professionals and whatnot. We're going to have our own online con with sales and panels and yeah. So there's more to come. I'm going to be working on that.
Fired up. I'm so fired up for that.
I don't know what I'm more excited for, the fact that I'm part of that or the fact that you said some of my friends, and you consider me a friend, my brother. I'm good with that. That I'll be fine with.
All right. Well, we're just going to call it Let's Have a Friend Con.
Yeah, that's right. Friend con.
Oh, God. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about this, and let's get that up on the screen.
All
right.
That OG poster is so good.
Right. So by the way, I just want to give a shout out to everybody in here. Mr. No Love, Lamar, my buddy, my homie, the other Davenger, Dave Correa is in here, and Derek Strom is in here. Welcome,
what up, guys?
Friends. All right. So I'm going to give like a little preamble. I think I'm the oldest one in here, and I don't know, Nick, if you were old enough to buy this when it came out. I know Angel. Okay, I know Angel wasn't.
Yeah, I think I was one. No, I'm sorry, I wasn't even born yet when this came out.
I'm old. So pre-internet, right? Like you had Wizard Magazine, you had Comics Journal, you had, literally word of mouth at the comic shop because previews existed. So store owners knew at least what was coming out ahead of time. But this thing was the first time I ever remember like the pre-hype for a book. I'm sure people got excited for Secret Wars when it came out and before it came out. But like 1990, I saw this poster and I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Nobody knew his origin. It was never told. There was like pieces, I think. I mean, I've never read the entire Claremont run, so I don't know if they dropped in pieces along the way. But when you meet Wolverine in Hulk 180 and then 181, he just comes out claws and costume, and an issue later he's gone and he's on the X-Men, whatever that is, like 6 months later or something like that.
Right.
But this, like, imagine seeing this as a kid and you're only, like the only thing of Wolverine is Wolverine in the yellow or brown and tan costume.
Sure. Yeah.
Yep. And so we somehow knew, I guess from previews and from my local store owner. And when I say we, it's me and my friend Seth. We grew up together and we collected and read comics together. And we knew that it was going to be some type of origin story. I didn't know who Barry Windsor Smith was. I don't know why I would have, because I didn't read Conan.
Right.
And, I didn't read this when it came out either. Like, this wasn't something I knew because this came out in 1986 and I was, barely 7 years old.
Yeah.
So that's like what, like if you can shift your mindset, and anybody who's watching this can shift their mindset into like, imagine this came out and all you knew about Wolverine was a handful of X-Men, run of X-Men, and this comes out maybe like, I don't know, 15 issues into the solo run, 1988. Yeah. So that's just a little preamble. Like the hype for this was something. Oh, Brady's in the house.
Yeah, Brady's here.
Vic, what's up? Brady.
Yeah, Brady. What's up,
Andrew?
man?
Hi, everybody. So the hype for this was real. Like I'm trying to equate it to something that maybe, would have happened in comics in the last 20 years. And there really isn't anything that I can think of.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and it's funny that you're telling this story because when you and I first started becoming close friends, right? You had told me this story before, and I was trying to think of something in my life that was kind of similar to that, and there kind of isn't, right, with comics. So I started reading I started seriously reading probably, I would say maybe 2010. I think 2010, 2011, where I was seriously collecting and reading, right? And I kind of fell off a little bit and then came back to it when I first was like getting comic books when I was a kid. Right? It was Power Rangers stuff, right? Power Rangers and some Disney stuff that my grandpa would give me. But my X-Men experience, right? My Wolverine experience is purely animated series, right? So we're not seeing any of this stuff, right? And I think to your point, right, about not knowing Barry Windsor Smith, I mean, you got to remember, right? He's been around since, I mean, for Marvel at least since like 68, right? 67, 68.
Yeah.
So when this comes out in 91, I'm sure it's a lot of the older folks being like, holy, because I mean, it says Barry Windsor Smith right on the bottom of Huge Weapon X, right? So for a lot of the older folks, they're like, holy shit, this is going to be thick, right? It's Barry Windsor Smith. It's right. We know his art. And this was kind of one of the first things that he was actually like really writing. Right?
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
he was previously known as pretty much just an artist for the most part, right? And I gotta say, man, I'm jealous. I'm jealous of not being able to be there when this was coming out, right?
No,
I think if anything, I could equate it to, and it's a little bit different now because of the internet, but I would say like I remember when Jonathan Hickman stuff was coming out, right? Time runs out, right? I remember when the time runs out thing was coming out, and that was kind of a big thing that we would talk about in my circle, like, oh my god, like what's gonna happen? And this was still at a time where, I mean, the internet still existed and stuff, right? For sure. But 2015, 2014, it wasn't like Instagram, how it is now, or it was a lot different back then. That's the only thing that I can think of from my experience. But I mean, this is iconic. I mean, it stood the test of time. I mean, we're talking about it now, how many years later? 25 years later? Is that 25? No,
30, 31 years
years.
later. Yeah.
So it's awesome, man. He really he knocked this out the park big time.
No. Anything to add on that one, Nick? Anything that you could think of that you would equate it to, like just the hype behind this and the fact that, like, I can't think of a character that we've all been into that we didn't already know their origin story to begin with.
Yeah, and I think that a huge part of it that I really love about it is such a feral depiction of like a superhero, you know, and Wolverine and you know, having that X-Men, you know, team, that origin of him, you know, becoming feral and having humanity stripped from him.
Yeah.
Also that poster, does that not look like Mel Gibson right there? Yeah.
Holy shit.
It's like Mel Gibson staring me in the face. I keep looking at it every once in a while.
Wow. That's
weird. Trippy. Yeah, that kind of does. Yeah.
It's in the mouth, like the nose mouth area. Yeah. Weird.
He was killing it at the time, so.
Yeah.
That's true. That is true.
Wow. So yeah, there's so much about this, like about Barry Windsor Smith, that I honestly don't know how I can't remember how I felt about the artwork when I first saw it, but it was foreign to me. It was weird, but I think that's the reason why it hits so much. You know, like this is, and you know, I don't think this gets talked about enough, but X-Men 205, which comes out a good 4.5, 5 years before Lethal Weapon X.
That's fucking funny. That is funny.
This comes out a good five years or so before, and it's Barry Windsor Smith basically, you know, giving the you know, not prequel, but kind of like a styled prequel, to what's gonna come out, because this is straight this, like they're
you
know,
absolutely.
It's just he has the mask on, so it's very interesting to see, and the end of this book with the fight of Lady Deathstrike,
so good,
and they just tear the shit out of each other.
I mean, look at those panels, man, and we talked about this before, like with Barry Windsor Smith's like Monsters or something else, where he doesn't necessarily, he can tell those stories with just pure art alone. I mean, if you go back to that previous page, right, those 4 vertical panels, or maybe the horizontal. There's no
dialogue.
There's nothing. There's nothing there. There's no captions. There's no dialogue. There's no nothing, right? And he really has this way about him where through his art, right, comic books, they tell, you know, 2 different stories, right? One with the dialogue, one with the pictures, right? And he has mastered, I feel like, both of those kind of aspects, right? And has really just reached a level where he can, as well as he can draw something, he can write it, right? And they don't have to be synonymous with each other. They can be totally separate things, and you will still get those emotions. You will still, right, get those raw feelings, and it's powerful shit, man. And not a lot of people can do that.
No,
yeah,
he's
and the
massive.
fluidity through the
Yeah.
panels.
Oh,
So
God.
good.
It's just so fluid. It doesn't
So
feel
good.
forced at any part of it. None of
Right.
when I was reading this was I like, oh, I just want to get through this page. I want, you know, I think you don't. You're so
Yes.
so hooked in and
Absolutely. And to add on to that too, right, which I think was really dope. So I have 72 through 84 of Marvel Comics Presents, but I also have the first print trade, right?
Yeah.
And what's really cool, right? So for those of you guys that don't have the singles, right, the floppies, Marvel Comics Presents, right? Those it's not just the Weapon X story, right? We see it on there. It's split, right? There you go. You got Red Wolf, you got Shanna the She-Devil, I think, or whatever her name is, and then you got Daredevil, and those are other stories in these books. Now, basically, what I'm trying to get to is the fact that if you're reading these as single issues, what's really cool is that there's no real stop or start or end or whatever to these books, right? So if you're reading this, because it's all collected in one, there's no like, oh, I know where the issue ends.
Right. There's no chapter break.
You don't feel that, right, at all when you're reading this. And the same can be said about these, right? Obviously, it's the same thing, but you're just like, all right, now I got to open the next one because I have to get to the next part because that's part, right? It's just so fluid in that way where you just, it's hard to put down, man. It's really good.
It is definitely it reads much better as a graphic novel than it does as a start stop because like I was even the first when I read it twice this week and my first read through I was trying to figure out where it started and stopped just as like a thing and I think I figured it out but I'm not even 100% sure and I want to point out Dave's comment because it is such a cinematography thing. Like his cinematography is amazing. I will say, second read through this week felt more fluid. Obviously, you know, seeing a movie twice always helps, but the way his panel layout and some of the dialogue goes in this, which is not cinematography, that's something a little bit different. But the dialogue in this can get a little confusing when you're bouncing here and there and here and there.
Sure. And whenever I read Barry Smith stuff, and it's like that with I don't know, let's just say because I have it next to me, right? Monsters, for instance, right? It kind of does that same, and I look at it as like a dance, right? It's literally a dance that you have to kind of. It's a flow, man, and like you're reading these panels, and we'll get to them later when we're doing the flip through, but it's a flow of words and captions and boxes and word bubbles and speed and so all these things, right, that you're kind of feeling. And what's really cool is that a lot of the times, sorry.
Throw it.
What's really cool is that a lot of the times they're kind of interchangeable in that way, right?
That is true.
Which is really fun. There's a couple parts on there where it's like you kind of have to read the one before, but it's very interchangeable for the most part, which is really fun.
That is true. This image has always stuck out to me.
So good.
It's the most emotional image that I think exists within the cover to cover.
Right.
This image, and I guess it's the there's another one. There's isn't there a second one? No, maybe that's the one.
Well, I think that if I remember, I don't have my 84 next to me, but I think that might be the wraparound for 84.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's dope. Yeah, I think that's
There's just something about it. There's just something about it. I don't know.
Well, you know what?
That one's great too. Yeah, I'll flip to this one.
That one's sick. I think it comes down to the coloring, right? The coloring, the shadow, the blues that he uses, the blues and blacks that he uses, just kind of like that. I mean, when I look at this, and we've talked about this stuff before, I'm not going to get too into it, but I look at things like, you know, we talked about things like trauma and depression and all these other feelings that you feel. And when I look at this personally, I feel that, right? And as you're reading this story, you kind of pick up on those little notions of like, oh, shit, right? It's really good.
Dave points it out. He says, I love how Barry Windsor Smith can capture a sense of calm in these images of Wolverine. He's covered in blood in both of those images, and he looks calm, and that's hard to do. And that's why I think it's such an emotional, you know, because like the sense of the picture of calm is the complete opposite of what Wolverine is in this moment.
Sure.
You know, he's so it's so intense, and he's gone so berserk. He's covered in blood that he's calm, and that's the scariest thing.
Right. And I think also too, to kind of add to that, right, is the duality of like the hardness of his claws, and the
Mhm.
softness of his fingers. You see how his fingers are kind of, I don't want to say
Yeah,
limp,
they're not clenched.
they're
They're like,
definitely not white knuckled for sure, right?
yeah.
And he's kind of just right, and then you have the hardness of the claws, and then you got the blood to add to it, and then you have the closed eyelids, and it's all those different kind of things that he kind of pulled together in saying, hey, here's this. Going back to the monster story, right? Here's this man that was trying to turn into a monster, right? And it's cool, man. It's really good. He did a fucking awesome job.
That's so sick.
So there are a lot of parallels
So
to
many.
what is going on in Weapon X in what he ends up doing in Monsters, over the course of the 30 years that he was writing it.
Right.
But this book, and I don't think this is a surprise to anybody that really thought about it when they were reading it, but this book's all about trauma. I mean, it really is all about trauma. You can use the parallels of Nazi experiments in World War II. You could, but it is at the core, and I'll say this probably multiple times tonight. It's a horror story.
Yeah,
I mean, this is an intense horror story, in every shape, way, and shape and form.
Yeah.
By the way, I did want to point out that I had a chance to visit Dr. Cornelius the other day, and well, let's just say things are a little different for me right now.
Starting to get feral.
Yeah,
Starting to get feral.
It's just really hard to go to the bathroom,
right.
with these claws.
Yeah.
Right.
What would be actually even crazier than that? Like, I don't remember what page it is. It's pretty early in the story, but if your hair just started growing and then Nick was like, he just shaved his head.
He was clean shaven at the start of this.
Yeah.
I know I was. It was weird. So this is the beginning, and it's funny because like I didn't really notice till the second time around that when you're getting the narration, and it's the only narration of by Wolverine in this book, really, except for towards the end, I guess there's a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't realize that like the professor is cutting out something, and Cornelius is like a fugitive, a doctor fugitive, and then Cornelius is looking at I guess articles of himself, or he's looking at articles of the professor. I can't really tell.
So I think that he's looking at articles of himself because you can see him there in that bottom left panel, and if you look, it says I'm all trying to look at the screen. I have it in front of my face, the entire book. If I remember right. So if you're looking at Dr. Cornelius, he has that number in his hand, right, where it's 555-7369. But on the third newspaper clipping down there, it says Dr. Cornelius, right, which is right. So he's looking at and then the newspaper clip above that says Mercy Killer Quack eludes FBI.
So he's like a suicide,
sure.
like a Dr. Kevorkian.
Yes, I think so. Like Dr. Death, right? And over there, it's on the newspaper on top, malpractice suits on the rise and whatever. So something was going on there, right? And Professor, who's the bald dude there on the second to top panel, he's right, kind of going through. He needs to find perfect people, perfect employees, essentially, right, to carry out this Weapon X program, right, which is what we're going to get into now. But it's really good, man, how they split that up between Professor, Dr. Cornelius, Logan,
Hines,
and Hines, and how they're kind of putting these panels together. A lot of them don't even have any words or dialogue, right? A lot of them you kind of have to pick up on reading background images and little tiny details here and there, which is really fun to do, especially if you're rereading it a couple different times. Right? I've read this story so many times, it's not even funny. But I feel like I pick up on something new every single time. It's really cool.
Yeah, the first time I read through it, I didn't even see that those were newspaper clippings.
Right.
I just honestly was just reading through it, and I saw the headlines, but didn't even see that first one was like clipped out.
Yeah.
Like they're like, doing the poster board.
Right.
Of all the clippings with the red strings all over the map. So
there's a lot of details in here that this is, and I, like I said, I read this a bunch of times when I was a kid, but I probably hadn't picked it up in a decade or so. I always thought, and maybe I don't think I'm the only one in this thought, but did you think that it's kind of funny / weird / purposefully done that the professor looks just like Professor X?
Yeah.
Yes.
I
No.
I
sure.
always thought that was like very interesting, and like, was he going for a sense of like trying to confuse the reader when you're first reading this? Like, is that Professor X?
Right. Could be. It
Yeah.
could be right, and it could be something like trying to parallel that, like if Professor X was, I mean, because right, you see Weapon X, right? You see this bald professor, right? It's,
Yeah.
for sure, and I thought the same thing. But it could be that it's kind of his take on if Charles Xavier wasn't as um, good of a person
Mhm.
as he is in comics traditionally, right? He does a lot of fucked up shit, but he's not this guy. That's for
No,
sure.
he's not this
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah,
But
he
it
draws a sharp, parallel in the paths they take.
Yes.
Because, Charles Xavier pushes all of those mutants to be the best version of themselves.
Right.
And in
Mhm.
a way, as evil as the intentions were,
Sure.
ultimately pushes Logan to be the ultimate version of himself.
Yeah.
Just very different tactics and how they go about it, but
Completely right, right. One's evil and one's a little bit more of a smart,
Sure.
he's a telepath, so he can kind of foresee things anyway.
Yeah.
Uh, but so it gives a little bit of background through Logan's narration that he was kicked out of the Canadian, military or whatever program he was part of there. And so he's basically just living a suicidal life, but he can't die, pills and alcohol and keeping a loaded gun just sitting next to both of those things.
yeah.
He's it's pretty depressing. It's pretty depressing to read where Logan's at. He's basically a burnout or a bum, and so you see them starting. They're doing, I guess it looks like a chimpanzee. I mean, it's a chimpanzee, but they're
Right.
doing this experiment on a chimpanzee that's going completely wrong. And it's funny because like he's staying at this halfway house or like pay by the day hotel called the Prophecy, and he said it's for the fallen. But here's the thing, and I would love to hear both of your takes on, he's having dreams about what's going to happen while he's staying at the Prophecy.
Yeah.
But he's clearly having the kind of nightmare that he has towards the end. He's having it at the beginning. So what I was almost thinking, even though I know it's not, but like it almost kind of gives me the feeling that this Prophecy Hotel is post Weapon X.
Yeah. So and that's so funny you say that, because after reading this a bunch of times, right, and you go to the end, then you come back to the beginning. That's kind of where a lot of people land. That's kind of where I land too. Of that, where what we're seeing right now is because, and we'll get to the end when we get to the end. But his whole thing is especially with the Berserker Rage and all that stuff, right, where he forgets a lot of stuff that he went through, right, while he was under that Berserker Rage. So when you're reading the beginning of the story, although it's stitched with pictures of Dr. Cornelius and the professor and all these other things, and then you have Wolverine or Logan, right, having these memories of what he's going to be going through to the end of the story. Yeah, that's kind of where I land too.
Yeah.
That while he's staying at the Prophecy, he's having those dreams and visions of himself, because his whole thing is that, and if you right towards the end, they wanted to keep everything a secret from him, right? After this whole thing kind of goes and plays out the way it plays out. So I'm in that boat too. I agree with you.
All right. Nick,
Yeah, I think that, I mean, also how he's carrying himself. I mean, post that trauma, post getting kicked out. I mean,
Right.
It would all kind of fit in that suicidal lifestyle of where he's at in life, and he stood the ultimate test. And I think Brady's correct, because he says you can't take away his emotion, will, and humanity. And
No.
that was the ultimate, as we get there, but that is the ultimate, puzzle piece that's missing.
Yeah, I agree. I think also Windsor Smith his ability to, even if it's not what he's trying to do, but he can tell a story in a timeline that is very, very puzzle pieced,
Right.
So there was something, like the thing that kind of made me think about it was this last kind of page of flashback or whatever you want to call it, or narration.
Tarantino does.
Yeah, he might have Tarantino'd us. It's very, very possible. He says hell is coming, like, unless he's just like, the whole thing is like he's feeling it.
Right.
He's feeling it. He's staying at the prophecy. He's prophesizing that something bad is coming.
Right.
But the other kind of reason I was thinking about it. Well, okay, I'm gonna whatchamacallit? I'm gonna debunk it and I'm gonna further it. This guy right here that shoots him is sitting at the bar watching him right here.
Ah, good catch.
I didn't know it. I didn't even see it.
But here's what I'm also thinking is that, okay, these guys are standing outside. They're at the bar, right? There, he pulls up in his car outside. He's sitting in the bar. They're staring at him. He's drinking. Then we go to the next page. It's all flash. It's a flashback to him being in, Canadian military and shooting. Right. Next page is I think 1 and 2 are post Weapon X, and then we go back. Post Weapon X. So 4 pages of post Weapon X, and then we go back here to when he's leaving the bar. Right. That guy shoots him, and this is where they kidnap him. So I do think he's Tarantinoing us. That's a word now. But that guy is definitely the guy that's sitting at the bar watching.
For sure it is. For sure it is.
I'm paranoid. I'm a quite, and this is something that most people don't know about me. I have a lot of anxiety. Anxiety is kind of a form, like paranoia is part of anxiety. And so I'm always seeing shit of people watching other people.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah.
How many blocks has that van been following me for? I'll make 3 quick lefts and we'll find out.
That's it.
Yeah, so I yes. All right. Okay, nobody's watching me through the window. So then we get to the kidnapping, and it gets interspersed with them prepping him for the injections and just this horrific, this
it's
horrific
so
scene.
good. It's so good. I mean, that tank, right? And the bubbles and everything is so Barry Smith, man. It's so crazy to me. It looks so good. And you feel that like wetness, right? You feel that dirtiness and the griminess, and as you're kind of going through these panels and how they're kind of stitched that way, and from past to present and what future and this and that. It's just so well put together and plotted so well, man, because there's a lot of stuff that's in the very beginning that actually comes true, prophecy, right? That comes true towards the end, and it's just the plotting is just so well done, man. It's really fun to read, especially like I said earlier, when you're rereading it a bunch of times, right? It's super fulfilling. Kind of one thing else on that. So talking about parallels, right? You look at something like Barry Windsor Smith's other books, right? Like Monsters. You have kind of those same panels of those bubbles and in the tank, right? And he just does that so well, right? That helplessness and the experimentation, and it's really good. And to kind of go with this cross-hatching style of drawing, it's really well done, man. He's good.
Yeah, because obviously this is all make believe, and so you have to create that.
No, it isn't.
You have to create that technology. I think that's something that people don't realize when you have such a great artist and a great writer, is they're creating things that don't exist. So how would Logan have his body pumped full of adamantium? How would this work? Yeah. And he tells that the most beautifully, I think, because
absolutely. No,
every panel, every page, I feel is like a metal album. That's why I wore the Mastodon today. Because you could read through this and it could be lyrics, imagery, everything of an awesome metal album.
You know what? There's this I don't know how much you listen to hardcore or not, but there's this hardcore band they're a straight edge band called X Weapon X, and it has and on the back of they have a shirt. I sent it to 360 Comics, Joe from 360.
I've seen that shirt.
The one where it says, I think I might have sent it to you also. So on the back it says, it's the year 2023. Do you know where your child, or do you know what your child is? And it has the classic picture of the 3 kids, and on the end where it says we're supposed to say Muty on it, crossed out, it says straight edge or edge or something like that. And I'm just like, that's so sick, dude. But yeah, but to your point, right? The panels are so metal, they're so hardcore.
Yeah. Lamar pointed out that the Matrix definitely took some, ripped this off, took some inspiration from it, because that's pretty much what Neo looks like.
Yeah, for sure.
But even going back to Nick's point, right, of creating technology that is not out.
Yeah,
I look at someone like Barry Smith, and I go back to Kirby, man. I mean, you look at some of the mechanisms Kirby was coming out with, right? All these crazy designs and these different kind of crazy angles,
the machines,
right? These machines, right? And as we're gonna flip through this book, we'll see some of that kind of Kirby-esque machinery. Maybe not so clunky like Kirby was doing it, but this is a lot more detailed, a lot more sleek, right? In that kind of gritty kind of way. But
it's more torturous.
More torturous.
Yeah, Kirby. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, Kirby did great machinery, but I don't think Kirby ever did like violent machinery.
No, yeah.
And
I would love to see a Kirby Iron Maiden or something. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. So it describes the injections and what they're trying to go through. There's some little things in here like how heavy he is, because even though he doesn't have the adamantium in him when he's being carried off, he's still like this thing that has probably high bone density, and like he's the perfect human because he's always healed. Right. He's always at 100%. They talk about it in he can drink more than anybody could drink because he doesn't get hangovers. So they're picking him up. He probably had fucking 15, 25 beers at the bar. That's gonna add weight. So this is where we start, it's such a great place to start because they don't waste time showing you them bringing him in or anything. He's already in,
and look how just muscular and huge he is prior to any of this. Like,
yeah, he's a tank.
That would be lifting dead, 250, 300 pounds, just carrying, everyone's carried a friend like that.
But. Yeah. It's just dead weight. Thank God. I don't think anybody ever had to carry me. Lucky them. I was blacked out when I was home. That's not a good thing. All right. Anywho, so we're getting into it. There's a lot of just kind of set up to the experiment. You can see that like this is searing and burning him, and then they talk about one of the first things that they say, which is the line that we already joked about, is that who shaved him, and it was like, what did you use, like garden shears? Yeah. But they find out very quickly his hair grows back, and so Hines kind of discovers these things, that he's been shot a bunch of times and he should be not alive. And then I don't know how important this is, seems silly, but Mr. Logan's hair has almost entirely grown back in just 20 minutes. And that sets off some weird mental alarms for the scientists. But by the way, I think Cornelius is modeled after himself. Is modeled after Barry Windsor Smith.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's safe to say.
Yeah. But it's brutal to watch it. And then Professor kind of dips out and they're like, all right, what was that? Yeah. Why did he just dip?
Yeah. And the second he walks out too, I think as a reader, right, when Cornelius says, he just, is that how he works or whatever he says, right? He just walks
out. Yeah, walks out in the middle of a crisis.
And I think that right there really sets the tone and really lets the reader know, like, oh, something really sinister is going on. If you couldn't pick it up from before of him clipping out the pieces of paper and stuff and doing this kind of weird, dark kind of thing, right? That really set the tone as far as how that professor is going to act for the rest of the series.
Yeah. And I'd say this is the part where it gets like, you read the next couple pages before you figure out what's really going on. Yeah. And I don't think, I'm not one to criticize, editing on a story, but you could have had the first panel being him like clicking on a microphone or something like that, so that we know, but what Windsor Smith does that is really helpful, or maybe it's the colorist. It's the letterer. Let's see.
Well, I think he was coloring it too. I think, right? I think.
It's Novak. It's Novak, the letterer.
Right.
So the letterer is giving us some indication that it's different people talking, and and so you get this green kind of like staticky looking speech bubble to show that it's Cornelius talking to somebody, and we never figure it out, right? There's never any there's never any answer, but I don't know if you guys know, because I don't, or somebody maybe in the chat, but do they ever go back and kind of tell some of the other sides of this story as to who was in charge of the Weapon X program and who he was talking to, or any of that? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know either, but I think, and I've never read Origin. I think it's like the 60s.
I did read Origin.
They don't talk about it in there at all?
No, because that's like his life before. That's his life growing up.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, I've never read it before, so I didn't know. But yeah, I think that and I agree with you. And I remember one of the first couple times I was reading that particular panel right there where it's green staticky, right, where he's on the phone. Yeah, that's not clearly evident by reading it by the previous panel. So I think that Barry Smith does that well enough, I think. But I think as a writer and as the artist, I think he's expecting too much of the reader sometimes.
Yeah.
To pick up on certain things, right? He's one of my favorites, and we've talked about this a lot. He's one of my favorites of all time. So luckily, I'm kind of used to his style already, and I can kind of pick those things up pretty quickly for the most part. But I feel like for the regular reader who's not really reading a lot of Barry Smith stuff, it would be kind of hard to transition. So kind of like the same kind of speech bubbles that kind of go around and they're kind of twirly, the shit that I like, right? Yeah. For the mainstream audience, I feel like it does take some getting used to, for sure.
And as soon as this is an iconic panel, but as soon as you flip the page, then you realize what's going on. So, but I agree with you, Angel. I think that there are times where Windsor Smith is giving is assuming that the reader is catching on to every little thing he's doing.
Yeah.
But that's the great thing about a reread or a reread is that you eventually get it. Mattis, I'm sorry that you're late, but you're here. That's all that matters.
As you flip through these too, I really love how there's a huge contrast between the technology, the sci-fi of it all, and then what is supposed to be a feral beast.
Right.
Being feral, and I keep honing in on that because the depictions of him, especially with the hair growing out like that,
right?
It's feral, and
absolutely.
That there's that perfect, I guess, balance between that futuristic tech and then the actual primalness of Logan.
Right.
Yeah,
and I think that depicts it beautifully, and as you go through these panels, it's so cool to see, just a beast becoming unleashed from this technology and from all of it, with the enhancements that it got from that technology. So
no, for sure, absolutely. Hey, Dave, go ahead, go to the previous page, please. I want to talk about something really quick. Just kind of Barry Smith's style of, because I do feel like he doesn't get enough credit in kind of modern times. He is such a scholar of art, man, and it's so evident in his work. I mean, you look at Cornelius right there on the bottom, the left-hand page, on the third panel.
This one,
beautiful, right?
Yeah, the lighting. I
mean, he just understands that lighting in a way that a lot of, I feel like, comic book artists, a lot of them get it for sure, but
not like that.
Not quite like Barry Smith. You know what I mean? It's so good. I mean, just and you'll kind of see it, and we'll see it as we go along too. You basically, let me put it this way. When you're reading Barry Smith stuff or looking through his coloring and his panels, you know where the sun is, right? You know where the light is. There's no light drawn anywhere in the panel. Yeah. There's no lamp, right, that you can see, but you know where that light's coming from. You know what I mean? It's really
really takes you there. It takes you into the lab, standing over Logan.
Sure.
You're right there with Dr. Cornelius, and
it puts you in there, and you're only seeing the character or the perspective of looking at that character. Like the light on Logan's forehead here is awesome. It just we should have mentioned this from the fucking first page, but it's in a league of its own. I mean, Smith I would say this is the pinnacle of Barry Windsor Smith, but this exists.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, and you could tell like the extreme ownership he has in his projects. You know, each
Sure.
panel gets so much love. You could tell he spent so much time, and he wanted no detail left unturned, and
Right.
and it shows in each of these panels. And I think that's really what helps with the fluidity, and allows for him to have some of that crazy structuring like East Bay was talking about with his chat bubbles, because it's just so fluid. Sometimes you're like, oh, I need to go back and read some of that, because you almost want to just read it as it's portrayed through the art. And I think that's an incredible testament to his ability.
Absolutely,
for sure.
When he wrote this and do everything. But
I just want to give a shout out, Amber. Hi, good to see you in here. And Andrew throws it in there that Barry Windsor Smith is king of anatomy. Here, that tech versus natural contrast really succeeds because 100%. Of it. And like like it's, and once again, I'll say this is a horror story. This is a, you're looking at what we see. We as the reader know that he'll endure this because of his healing factor, but that doesn't mean that he's not in pain. And as you could see, when the claws first pop, you start, everybody's freaking out. The lab's freaking out.
Yeah.
The one thing I would say is that, like, if the dialogue didn't reflect that there was a ton of blood, I'd be like, oh, whatever. But then you look at this panel here, and it's just like, oh, yeah, that's like he just lost a half a gallon of blood with the claws popping, and everybody's freaking out, and it's very. He does this thing. Barry Windsor Smith does this thing where, like, he doesn't have to show everything because the aftermath is more horrific than the action. Yeah. And that there it is right there. We don't see him kill this young scientist, but we do see one of his ribs protruding out of his chest after Wolverine skewers him.
Yeah.
And so.
But you can like see it. You can see it happen in your head,
Right. Yeah.
Like, exactly how that went down. And I think that's pretty powerful. Little skill he has in his spell book. No, on the page before, Dave, the one page prior, just to hint on what Andrew was saying with anatomy, in the top left panel, he almost looks frail but muscular. But the bottom right panel, where he does have that blood pumping and raging,
like muscles
and
on muscles.
That is how the body works, though, and he does nail the anatomy. You don't get those huge pumps until you activate a lot of those muscles, and his adrenaline's kicking. And I think that is what Andrew was saying, though. It does contrast that sci-fi, Neo in the Matrix pod, frail and baby-like.
Yeah, sure.
But to him, raging out, I'm not trying to say hulking, but coming out of there, full adrenaline, full blood pumping, looking huge and not so frail anymore. Very dangerous.
Yeah, I want to see Barry Windsor Smith's Wolverine right here versus, and I'm talking purely anatomy, right? Of them in a fight, of purely drawn anatomy of Barry Windsor Smith's Weapon X versus Sam Keith's Wolverine with the fucking super hairy and just fucking absolutely brutish, right?
The forearms, though.
And it's the funny thing is, like, the beauty of that is right after this ends is when Sam Keith begins his run.
Yeah,
that's one of the things I wanted to just mention is that the beautiful thing about Marvel Comics Presents, it showcased so many different artists doing Wolverine. And I got to be honest with you, I never read any of the other stories because I didn't give a shit. When I was a kid, it was just like Wolverine. Sure. But you got like some of the best, like you got Eric Larson, Barry Windsor Smith, and Sam Keith all within like 50 through 120.
Yeah.
I mean, Sam Keith with the longest run. I think he went like, I was like 30 something issues.
Something crazy like that. Yeah. Sam Keith, he's good, man. He's cool too. I like some Sam Keith for sure. But I think I've read a good amount of the Marvel Comics Presents, but this is by far the best of it.
Oh, it's the
sure. And I think everyone can agree with that.
That's what I think of when I hear it. It's like just this run.
Yeah. What chapter are we in? I would say this is like chapter 3.
It could be, like we talked about earlier, man. When you're reading the trade, man, it's hard to tell where it stops and where it starts. It's just so well put together.
Yeah.
But I'm not too sure. Even like my trades, not the pages aren't even numbered or anything.
No,
Which
me
I-
either.
Which I thought would be kind of cool, but that's all right.
Oh,
but also too, so going to the story. So on that page there where you're talking about that young doctor that was killed, Dave said there's a Sam Keith drawing of
Wolverine as Weapon X in the back. I have to. I'll have to figure out which one it is.
Yeah, we'll have to look through that for sure.
Yeah,
But it really just shows the sinisterness of not Cornelius. I'm sorry, of the professor.
The professor, right? Yeah, he didn't give a shit.
He didn't give a shit, man. He was just like, so prior to this, right, Cornelius, Dr. Cornelius, who's the red-haired fellow right there up above the image on the second page, he's talking with Professor, and Professor is kind of this standoffish kind of dick, and you'll see that just purely based on the word bubbles, right? You don't even necessarily have to see who it's coming from, but the fact that his word bubbles are going over other people's word bubbles is showing that he doesn't really give a shit what you're saying because he's going to interrupt you. You know what I mean?
He has the authority. He
has the authority. He's going to interrupt you when you're talking, right? And it's basically my way or the highway. And so he basically essentially tells Dr. Cornelius, like, we're ready to start testing this Weapon X on humans. And Cornelius is like, dude, there's no way. Are you serious? Right? And so unbeknownst to Cornelius there, the doctor who's performing this, right? Professor is more like kind of orchestrating the whole thing, right? He's not getting his hands dirty. He's not injecting the adamantium. He's not doing anything like that. Cornelius and his buddies, his doctor buddies, are doing it. And Hines, right, the woman that's in there, unbeknownst to Cornelius, there, Professor unleashes, or he tells this young doctor who we learn that's his first day on the job. That's his first day on the job. Is the Weapon X program? Like, bro,
did a whole day and last
I know that job was
first day, last day.
Yeah, first day and last day, dude. I would be so pissed. At my work, they always talk, because I work with these huge machines, right? They always talk about leave work the same way you came in.
Alive.
Yeah. Not alive, right? There's no way Professor was saying that shit. And it's just really sad, right? It's really sad because you see this young doctor go in there and he doesn't know what the hell to do, right? So Professor says, just go in there, just go help this guy who's bleeding, right, for the previous panel or the previous page. And the poor doctor goes in there, and like to you guys' point, right, we don't see what happens and what transpires necessarily. We see the end result, and it's this young poor doctor on his first day of work getting fucking sliced and diced by Weapon X, boy.
By the way, I know I said that Barry Windsor Smith modeled Cornelius after himself, but it's also John Byrne.
Yeah, it could be.
It's very much John Byrne.
Yeah,
If you look at the silhouette here, like without seeing his eyeballs,
sure.
That's John Byrne. So Dave did say that Sam Keith did a Weapon X. I actually just found the image. Give me 1 second.
Oh, cool.
I'll put it on the screen real quick here. Yeah, so that's Sam Keith doing Weapon X. You guys can see that?
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
Sick.
Yeah.
Damn, that's cool.
Yeah, so all right, let's get rid of that real quick and come back to us, and we figure there we go. Going back to story overshadowing all the others, I had to message Dave to see if I bought he thought it was a bigger book, but it's not, because it was only 8 pages per issue of Marvel Comics Presents or something like that. Although I think the last issue is a full Weapon X. I think that's what it is. If the 401k is to die for. Ouch! Ouch! So he kills the scientist, and there's another shot right there of the rib cage just torn out. I mean, brutal.
Metal.
Yeah. It's issue 86, part of his Wolverine run. It's okay, Dave. We got to see the image.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thank you, Dave.
So basically, the professor's listening, of all of them, horrified that he murdered the scientist, and he doesn't even want to. He's just like, all right, cool, and he clicks off the microphone, and so after he clicks off the microphone, he comes into the room and finds out that this happened. That Wolverine jumps through the glass to attack the rest of them, but his life support stuff gets pulled, and he collapses on the ground. So like, there's the reprieve for these characters, including Cornelius, that they didn't get killed because he's still being held together by wires and machines, and then they tie him up with these cords that like kind of define a lot of the series. I think about these colored, and what I imagine them as, not rope, but more like something elastic, like like mountain climbing rope that's got a little elasticity to it.
Yeah.
Because like there is no way, no matter how strong you are, you can't break free of that, because the more that you try and pull apart, the more that they tighten around you.
Right.
So that's what. But these colored ropes, or whatever you want to call them, cords, have always stuck out to me in my memory, because they're different than the wires and the machines that are keeping him alive.
Right. Yeah, it's cool imagery right there.
It is. So
it's just like I was saying with those details. Just he didn't have to do it like that, but
he did it. But he's so good at it.
It's like that mastercraft,
It really is. Like,
that's right.
For every and that's the reason why I call this the greatest Wolverine story ever, because even though it's the greatest Wolverine story ever, it's a great story that is about Wolverine, or about what made Wolverine. Like, if you had a character that was called Schmolverine and he was similar and you put him in this story, it would still be a great story because of the person that created it. Then again, if you had a character called Schmolverine, I don't think anybody would hire you to write a story called Schmolverine Schmeppeneps. Oh God!
But real quick, so before you turn, you know what? I think it might have been the previous page, or maybe it was two before. Well, what I think is a cool storytelling technique that he uses there is after Wolverine breaks through the glass, right?
Yeah.
So before he breaks through the glass, the panel above that is Dr. Cornelius telling Professor of what happened, and then it goes into those images of it's basically telling us, giving us the image of what Cornelius is telling the Professor, but what we're seeing actually took place just a little bit before, and it's just really cool storytelling that's not really linear in that way, right? It's a lot of like little, I mean, it's not a super far callback, but it's a callback to what had just happened. It's really, really cool technique, man. And it really,
with those blue hues too.
Yeah,
really,
to give the flashback is right. It's a cool dark hue. And not Hugh Jackman, but Hugh Jackman is also a cool hue. And you're really starting to see them understand that what they've done to him has put him in permanent berserker rage. And as readers and as Wolverine fans, for years and years before this and after this, we know about the berserker rage, but they don't know what that is, and they don't know that they basically just put him in a permanent state of berserker. There's no Logan in there right now. Right. There's just Wolverine.
I mean, this whole run is just filled with dramatic irony that like it's a lot of stuff that we already know about this character, right? Because he's been out at this point he had been out for how many years? 25 years. 75 to 91.
Yeah, about 25 years.
There's a lot of stuff, and going back to what his origins and stuff like that, right? We were only given a couple things here and there throughout the Claremont run and throughout this and that, and so really kind of picking up on those things and knowing this as a character, and especially reading this now in 2023, right? There's so much more to that character that we know about, and these guys are just learning it for the first time, and it's like we know where this is going to go, right? We know what this character is capable of. And it's kind of sad in a way, just like that doctor on his first day, because we do know what Logan's capable of, and that he will fucking tear your ass up, dude. Right? Yeah. So all these other people who are like, no, well, things are kind of amiss right now, but we'll get it under control. It's all good. It's not gonna be, man. Right? We know this as his character. We've seen these moments in time through comics of him just going absolute batshit, right? And so just kind of the way they kind of tell that story throughout this is really cool. And watching them learn those little things is just like, oh my God, no, please.
Well, this is it right here. The professor says, look here, what do you see? And then Cornelius says, what do you think? I see a wild beast that was once a man. Right. And Professor says, he says, a little bit of dialogue, and he says, you must understand that this infernal thing is what Logan has always been. Mm. And they're not wrong.
Sure. Yeah, that's right.
At all. But
they learned that as they were doing this. The other people, right? The other doctors and stuff, they were learning this as they go. That he was, and I think this is where it opens up the conversation between Cornelius and Professor, I think, if I'm not mistaken, of what Logan actually is, which is
He's
what
a
we
mutant.
know, a mutant, right?
Yeah. And these two panels really kind of cement what I was saying. It's like the more he struggles, the tighter they become, and he's just writhing.
Right.
He's writhing. I also thought it was very interesting, and I guess it's because like they pushed his healing factor to its limit. But when we see Logan, and they kidnap him in the beginning, his hair is not that crazy. But because they pushed his healing factor to its limit, like his hair grew out to the max.
Sure.
A mane, a beast. But these panels of Wolverine struggling, it's just you're not. As a reader, I don't know if you're realizing it, how much you're starting to feel sympathy for him so quickly. But, he pops the claws and they don't even waste any time. They just blast him with what I guess is maybe like, sarin gas or something like that, or, nerve gas. All right, Amber, have a great night. And
definitely like an explosion of swords.
Right.
Yeah. It's not just like, it's not just
a single shot. It's that's scattered for sure.
Yeah, so they blast him with it.
And I love that like fire.
Dude, there's something about Barry Smith's flames, man, that are
I love it.
I mean, come on. Right?
It's everything he does. It's just better than everybody else.
So good.
This shot here.
Yes.
Like you said, like we were saying, technology that he invented, technology on the page.
Totally.
I mean, look at the amount of cables he drew for that. That's just insane. And it's just incredible.
Yeah. I think the only thing that kind of parallels this or kind of reminds me of this is that Vision story. I don't remember what Avengers book it is, but it's where they're putting, I think it might be a West Coast Avengers thing actually, where he's
West Coast Avengers. They're not as cool as the West Coast Avengers.
But they kind of have a scene like this too, or a panel like this too, where he's sitting on a table and he's kind of taken apart and there's all kinds of cables.
Yeah.
I don't remember who penciled that issue, but I'll figure it out at some point today.
So Daryl, we were saying we don't know who was intended to be, and I asked the gentleman here, and I asked the chat if anybody knows if they ever did any other stories that kind of plug some of the holes, and they're not plot holes; they're just holes,
right?
Of who he was talking to. I mean, it could. I mean, if what's his name? Trask, not Trask. Who did Brian Cox play in X-Men 2? In X2, what character was that? What was it? Trask?
I think it was.
I think it was.
So maybe it's supposed to be him, but I don't know if they ever really,
Yeah, because I always saw it as a kind of like a, when you have these like black sites, of like CIA kind of development, anything governmental like that.
Yeah.
No one wants their name. No one's.
Of course.
I mean, and it says I think like no one can hear us.
Right.
And so.
You know what? If it was Trask, I mean, that would be kind of interesting. If you go back to, I think it might be like the third or fourth page. Here, I'll show you here. We find out later on that this is one of the guards, the security guards, whatever. But tell me he doesn't look like a Sentinel.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I mean? A little bit,
does.
right?
Yeah.
And at first, when I had read this for the first time, I thought it kind of was, but then it didn't pop up again until like way later on, and we find out it's one of the security guards or security enforcers or whatever it is, right? Not Xavier, security enforcers, aka bishops. People don't talk about bishops.
And maybe he's like David said in the beginning, drawing on that imagery between like Professor X and Dr. Cornelius and these guards and the Sentinels. Like a lot of the imagery is there that he's pulling from.
Absolutely
interesting. So Daryl chimed in and said he left it open ended because he knew Claremont had plans, which was intended to be Apocalypse.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. That's amazing. But
I did not know that.
That makes sense because Apocalypse is immortal.
Sure,
so he's been around, and that's and if Apocalypse if he was the force behind creating Wolverine, that just means he was creating him to be a horseman.
Right, that's right.
Which makes total sense, and
especially if you're Berserker Rage,
Yeah. I mean, if we didn't know Wolverine to be a hero the way that he is, right, I could totally see him being a horseman of Apocalypse. 100%.
Yeah, that's true, Andrew.
100%.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Andrew says the professor might not know who he's talking to either. Faces chain of command, as Nick kind of just said.
Yeah.
So, but the Apocalypse idea is really cool. I like that. So
yeah, that's interesting.
So they get him back, and the one thing I wanted to point out, the moment there's almost no levity in this story, which makes sense,
Right.
except the 3 times that they mock the professor. And that's like the only time where there's a little levity,
Right.
like where he starts. He's like, "You have one master, and it is me. You will do anything I say." And Heinz is like, "Professor," and he's like, "See, Wes, what? We haven't begun
Oh, yeah,
yet.
yeah,
The
yeah.
machine isn't on," and you see Cornelius with just the faintest fucking smile on his
Yeah.
face. It's so
Big
good
man.
because they do it to him like 2 more times,
Right.
and like this is not a story where you're supposed to laugh, but we get a couple of moments where
Yeah,
we're
there's a
allowed
couple of
that.
So I feel like Barry Smith, because he does that in Monsters also, which is not the same story, right? But it has to do with experimentation and all these other things, right? Where the head professor is like this total Nazi-esque person, right? And some of these doctors that are working under them are like, "Yo, you're taking your job way too seriously, so we're gonna kind of riff at you." And we see that in this book, and you also see that in Monsters also, right? Of them just totally riffing on him and talking shit behind the professor's back, and it's really funny. But there's, like you said, there's only a couple parts in this where you're kind of cracking a smile because this story is super, super intense.
Yeah. So the one thing I really enjoyed about this is that it wasn't just a straightforward scientific experiment, because they're looking at what happens is they tap into his thoughts. They tap into his nightmare, his living nightmare that he's going through right now. I always thought that this was, as a kid, I didn't understand what was going on. As a 12 and 13-year-old kid reading this, I did not understand what was going on. But as an adult, I'm like, oh my God, this is horrific. Like we're seeing what Logan's feeling right now in these moments without him knowing that he's feeling them.
Yeah, and I think the cool part too is that they did this unintentionally, right? What they wanted to do was they didn't want to be the receiver of messages. They wanted to be the transmitter of messages, right?
Right. They're trying to control him.
Right. They're trying to control him. And so when their machine went on the fritz, right, then it kind of went ass backwards. And now they're broadcasting to your point, right, his feelings and his thoughts and all the things that he wants to get out, which is a totally horrifying image. I mean, look at that skull with those spikes coming out. I mean,
it's metal, like Nick was saying,
almost like bone spurs.
Yeah,
yeah.
If there's, I mean, when I look at that, what I see is nerve pain, right? That's what I see.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So many different nerves in our body, right? I see all these different pain points, right, from your nerves coming out, and just pure agony, and it's horrifying, man. It's super terrifying.
It would be a great metal album cover.
Yeah, seriously. So he starts freaking out, and Mindless just grabs Heinz and starts choking her, and then he goes after Cornelia, the professor, which is, we find out is going to be something that we discover that all he wants to do is go after the professor.
Yeah.
Yes.
And look at that page on the left-hand page, top panel. So we see Wolverine kind of get up and going towards the professor, like Dave said. But if you notice, his thoughts are still being broadcast in the background. And look at where that skull from his thought process is looking straight at the professor, right? So they both got their eyes on the professor, which I thought was really fucking like, whoa, dude, that is scary. Heinz is all fainted right there.
Yeah, the imagery there is amazing.
Oh yeah, for sure. Just having eyeballs in a skull is terrifying by itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is. Right? There shouldn't be any eyeballs in there.
Right.
So we fast forward, and you see this image after he kind of passes out because they tranquilize him.
Yep.
Of the professor's skewered through the face.
Yeah.
See the claw mark, one through the one eye. I think that's a claw mark there, and then a claw mark through the other eye.
Yeah.
And
I think the funniest part, man, and as you're reading this, right, what I think is so cool is that there's no bub in here. There's no professors of what I do, and right, there's not really any snicked in here. I think there's maybe one snicked in there. Maybe
there might be one or two, but you're right.
Yeah, there might be one or two. But what I think is funny is, and we'll kind of cross that bridge when we get there. But for right now, what I want the people in here to kind of realizes that we haven't seen Snikt yet. Throughout this whole read-through so far, Snikt has not come up, but his claws have been out, okay? So we're getting other kind of sounds and onomatopoeias, right? Spuck and skuck and cuck and schlick and all these other things. And wait for the first Snikt to come out. It's so dope once you know this guy as a character and what he's going through. It's really, really fun.
All right. I might have to use the restroom real quick.
Uh-oh.
But
we'll
guys
keep it lively.
You guys continue the conversation.
I guess. Yeah, I got you. We're good.
It did get feral.
Everything's getting feral right now.
Well, the wolf eyes panel, you know, it has like that like wolf eye look.
Yeah, go ahead. You can leave it right there, Dave. We're good.
Man,
right.
it's awesome. It's just like post, like, because then it's him sedated and not beast like.
Yeah.
And not raging out.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, in that berserker.
Absolutely. And I think too, so if you look at that page.
JD, we're in control.
Yeah. The
Prison block D.
Yeah. D for dickheads, huh? Yeah, that's right. No, that panel's super dope, man. I mean, you see what I like the most, I think, is and this is kind of like knowing Barry Smith's style of like not needing actual speech bubbles, right? Where he just uses caption boxes, but he color codes his caption boxes, right? So I know, and mainly because you already read this much of the story, you kind of know how characters are and how they talk D for dick. Yeah, I've been there, done that, buddy. And so seeing this dialogue here, right? It's color coded into who's talking. You can kind of figure that out just based on what we know about the characters already. Which I think is really cool. And Wolverine's just fucking sitting there, right? Just totally just gonzo, done for, right? But still looking feral and crazy with his crazy hair and all the tubes going back into his body.
Yeah, almost listening subconsciously.
Right.
You know, he does have like some contrarian opinions, like when he does come out, like, I am not what you said I was.
Right.
And a lot of that, you know, what he was told, he's sedated. He's
right.
You know, it's almost like subconscious.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Evolving through all these changes and, you know,
yes,
really pushing him to the brink of himself. And, you know,
how close, right? And it kind of begs the question, right? It kind of it's thought provoking in that way where it's like, how close can you push a guy who's essentially immortal to death, right? Before they really start feeling those things of, right, of that fight or flight thing or of that, right, end of the tunnel kind of thing. It's pretty interesting. And we see that here, right? It's just, it's the whole birth of the Berserker Rage, essentially. Not the birth of it because he had already had it, but of him bringing it out here. So Dave said that the image of the professor with the hole in his face is so savage, such a horrific image. Yeah, dude, it's nuts. I think what's horrific too.
It's sick. I love that thing.
Really, it's the fucking. I mean, I don't know.
The mouth open too, like. That's another thing that I'm big on. Like, you get, I don't know if I have it out here. I posted on Instagram, but that like mouth open rage moment. You know, you're not dying, just like you know, you're going out and you just got stabbed through the face with the medium claws that you just created.
That's right, bro. I'm gonna tell you right now. My wife knows this. All my closest homies know this. What I'm scared of the most is getting stabbed to death. That is my worst fear. Right. Yeah. I would say that tops falling to my death. That's up there also. But getting stabbed to death is my number one fear. So seeing this image today.
Oh, and going through the eyes too. Oh, like his last imagery is those claws coming.
Right. That's right. And then having that mouth ajar like that, yeah, it's really fucked up, man. It's really fucked up. So for the readers who may have not read this part or read this at all, that image that we're seeing. And I don't know if we talked about it. I don't think we talked about it, but it's still projecting his subconscious or his thoughts, right? So he's still hooked up to that machine that we talked about earlier, where whatever he's thinking, that's being projected onto that screen there. So that's what he's thinking about. That's what the Wolverine, who they just got sedated, who's back down there on the floor, kind of writhing in pain and kind of going out. That's his last thought before he's out.
No.
It's that thing that you touched on earlier. You don't have to see him do it. You see the result, and your mind fills in the blanks.
You can see Wolverine throwing it, you know.
I came back.
Hey, welcome to my channel. Welcome to West Coast Avengers. Good to have you on.
When was that sale? East.
Oh, shit. Oh, you guys. It's the first time I've ever had to go to the bathroom during a stream.
Hey
I'm
man,
honored.
I'm gonna tell you one thing right now. A little line that I live by. It'd be like that sometimes, bro.
Mhm. Yeah, luckily, unfortunately for me and everybody else watching, we are all human. Yeah,
That's right.
I went feral. Um,
Yeah.
that thing you touched on earlier, you don't have to see him to do it. You see the result of your mind fills the blanks and how it happened. It
Yeah, we're
is great
talking about
storytelling.
them punching right through the eyes of
Of
those poor
yeah.
gentlemen right
That's
here.
Okay, so I love this image. It's another one of those images that there's so much kind of emotion you can feel by looking at this image of Logan and Wolverine. And it's so calm. It's so calm.
Yeah.
And it's the juxtaposition between the wolf's eyes,
Yeah,
obviously,
and that's what I was
as well as
loving.
eyes.
What I wanted to say on that one is just because it goes from that to a sedated. The rage, is over, it's ended. And I think that's a sweet juxtaposition, like you said.
There's so I am human, unfortunately, Brady. There's so much that Barry Windsor Smith does, and Life Death's another good example.
Yes.
But he didn't write that. That's Claremont. But still,
Right.
like, there's so much emotion that he conveys, whether he's writing the story or not.
Yeah.
It's and the trauma involved in this story. I don't know his background, his life. I know he's very, he's pretty private. There's not a lot of interviews with Barry Windsor Smith on record, even from like back at this time. He just doesn't do a lot of interviews. I gotta imagine he's carrying some emotional weight in his life because
Sure.
it comes through on the pages of every story that he illustrates. The anatomy on the wolf and the weight of the action at the bottom panel is drawing his nuts.
I think that's why a lot of people relate to this Weapon X run so well too, because no matter if you're going through physical trauma, emotional trauma, anything, it still hurts.
Yeah.
Like people don't understand, and people can look at you while you're undergoing that pain and really have no idea, how much pain you're in. But like that skull imagery of where they're looking at his pain, personified like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That could be anything. That could be anything Barry Windsor Smith is going through, and it all still makes the same point.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I think taking the Marvel character that can endure the most pain and showing us the hell that he went through is just like, see, and like you said, Nick, anybody, you could look at anybody and not know the trauma that they've been through or what they're, the pain that they've gone through, whether it's physical or mental or both. But yes, this scene, he's just standing there and they're like, what's going on? Is he alive? Is he catatonic? What's his heart rate doing? And he's just standing there as the wolves attack him and just start to rip him to shreds. And it's the listen to that feral roar. And this is Professor talking in
Correct.
green. Listen to that feral roar, the bloodlust, gentlemen, we have succeeded. And then Cornelius is like, I don't think that sound is bloodlust, Professor. I think it's pain. He recognizes it. Yeah. There you go. There's the difference between people that understand versus a soulless piece of shit.
Yeah.
Like the Professor, who's just, just like, all right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. We got him. We got him where we want him. We got him to
and he's pushing, he's getting what he wants out of this project.
Yeah.
No matter what Logan endears for it. And I think he's, in his bubbles, it really shows, his emotionless, like, it's working for me. Like, I'm happy with everything. So, and the contrast to everyone around him of like, should I be doing this? Like, are we doing something bad? Are we doing something immoral? And I love that, it's a stoic face for, throughout all of his panels, he keeps a very stoic, emotionless kind of like, I don't care, that Logan's suffering. And I think it like really builds up that horror that Dave was talking about with this Weapon X run. That scientist who doesn't care, he just wants to push and push and push no matter what. it puts someone through. So,
Andrew had said, the anatomy of the wolf and the weight of the action at the bottom panel drawing is nuts. But if you look at this one here, I don't know. I don't think you were talking about this one, Andrew, but you see Wolverine, like he's got his claws through this wolf, and he's like, you could see kind of the muscles, all his chest and his arms are just like flexed. And he is, this is just showing the strength of him at his berserker rage.
Absolutely. And you can almost, like, the way that wolf is kind of still, like, because of inertia, right? It's being stopped by his, right? You can almost feel that wolf still kind of going towards him, right? And then being totally stopped by his claws and his arms, right? But you still feel that kind of weight being pushed down on him, which I think is really cool. And I think really what kind of gives away is the way that the tail of the wolf is still swinging towards him.
Yeah, it's going forward.
Yeah, it's really
and the angle of even Logan's arm, like, it's all perfect for,
right.
Of him having to have stopped it. And I think that's what helps build that fluidity in a lot of his imagery, is that, we already see the wolf coming at him.
Right.
And we're playing it through, and that's the end still of him holding him upright in the air like that. Something incredible, that I'm not going to be able to do.
So I had texted Dave earlier today, just kind of asked, because me and Dave are roughly the same age, and I had said, did you know who Barry Windsor Smith was when you picked this up, or was it like you or like me? Were you just buying this because it was Wolverine? And I definitely did not appreciate Barry Windsor Smith's artistic mastery when I was a kid. But as I got older and I would look at more of his stuff and I would look at this again, there's nobody out there that was able to illustrate this way and to give so much of his story. Like you could read this without a single word of dialogue and it would hit just as hard.
For sure.
And that's what it's hard. Like, you have to, like, stop and remember to read all the chat bubbles on some of these, because you're just like, on here,
Yeah.
See the wolf, like, moving through the snow like that. I think that's incredible. On that last panel, I think it's last page. Sorry.
Yeah, this one.
It's on his back on that top panel. It's on his back and, like, run through the snow with Wolverine pushing him claws deep in. And so that's just all these, like, brutal kills. Look. Way cooler because that imagery, he has a very fluid way of doing it. But
this is him at his most berserker, because we know, for years, like, Wolverine doesn't want to kill animals if he doesn't have to.
Yeah.
He's always vocal about that.
Yep.
I think it's in one of the first, like 10 or 12 issues of the Wolverine run where I think he encounters a bear and he's like, look, I have no, he's had multiple scenes where will talk to animals and be like, I'm not trying to hurt you, even though the animal's just growling at him. But so you're seeing him there's nothing there. This is just all them pushing him with buttons, literally and figuratively. And then this, I always thought this was interesting, because I don't think I really understood what was going on in the dialogue here, but then they're looking at a thermal image of his arm with the adamantium bonded on it, and it looks so rad. The purple, pink, and I guess some light blue in there.
Sure, light blue. But I think also, too, to your credit, right, of reading this when you were a kid, it's really advanced, dude.
It is.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's so technical and so scientific, and there's a lot of words. I mean, I'm 31, right, reading this shit, and I'm just like, what? I don't even know what that means. Let me look that up real quick. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of that in here.
Distortion in the metacarpals.
Yeah. That one I barely knew. You know what I mean? But to his credit, like we keep saying, right? It's good to look at his imagery and just kind of pick up that story from there. So there's not a need to know all the medical terms and all these other things, right?
Sure.
It's nice to know, sure. But as a kid reading this, man, I mean, you look at some of these pictures here, it's like, dude, no fucking way. No way.
So then he passes out, and they're like, "We'll let him." The professor says, "I like the idea of him resting in his own gore." It's like, wow, fuck you, man.
Yeah, dude. Total. I mean, just does not care about other things or people, or I mean, just purely self-serving dude, right?
Very much.
And it shows. And as we kind of get to the end, right, where I think we're about halfway through, you're just like, fuck this guy. This guy sucks.
He does. He's.
You know
I
what
mean,
I mean?
it definitely reminiscent of, you know, you hear about the Nazis that did experiments in World War II and what they you know, what they would do. And I mean, I wouldn't even think of that parallel if it wasn't for
Absolutely.
monsters
Yeah,
existing,
for sure.
because this is just like an extended piece of what you know, some of this is. So this is where we get to the point where Professor is telling Cornelius that he wants to have control of him in up to a 10-mile radius.
Right.
And they're like, oh, we can only do 3. And it kind of gets pretty practical. And I liked that they got practical with it, talking about how Cornelius is like, well, look, if you want 10 miles, you're going to weigh him down with battery packs. See if I give a shit. Fine, do it. You know? And then I do kind of love this. You can turn him into a traveling radio station if you like. And yeah, the professor's like, your descent is noted, doctor, but let's not get testy. And he's like, whatever. He actually says whatever. Lamar says, I don't know if you read this as you read this as a 12-year-old, could you fully understand and realize how detailed the story was? No, for sure. And that's why the more times that I read this as an adult, the more this story made sense to me, and how I somehow am able to get back to the mindset of when I was a kid when I read this, and kind of seeing it differently as I do now. But yeah, reading this as a 12-year-old, not the easiest thing in the world. Derpa in the house. What's up, my friend? So this is also, they're literally cutting his arms open. Like, his arm is open. They're fitting him with more wires and more I don't know, circuits or whatever, so they can use that to control him. But I think, is this the part? There's a part where they talk about how they want to put terminals. They actually talk about putting the terminals in his hands for the claws to pop out, because they do mention that the flesh keeps closing around the clamps.
Right.
They have it. So it's very interesting. I don't remember that as a kid, and it's nice to get that practicality of, this is how Wolverine got the terminals in his hands.
Right.
You know? So this is they have him awake, sedated. They're fitting him with the stuff. He's You know, he's groaning. I won't turn it into a moan because he's not moaning. This is not sexual. But then you get to the next page, and this is one of the more iconic images. It's just
so good.
It's sad. It's sad.
It's so sad, dude. But it's like, Captain Crockpot. What's up?
What's up, Crockpot?
Yeah, I mean, we as the reader, we've known and loved Wolverine for some time now, right? And then when you come across this image here, you're just like, wow, this is really depressing to see this hero, this larger than life hero like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And he looks like a giant. Like, look at the size, the proportion of his feet. His feet are gigantic. Like, you can't overstate how the anatomy that, you know, Barry Windsor Smith draws is just on a different level than everybody else.
For sure.
So he does draw pain so well, and we're gonna see something that should be painful, but because they have him knocked out and they start using the audio, the control system, they start popping his claws out like they're little piggies. Like this little piggy went to market, that thing that our mom or dad used to do when we were young kids, children, adults, infants, whatever. Yeah, my mom still does that to me. Hi, Mom. So we get another swipe at the professor, because the professor demands to use this control system, and he starts having Wolverine walk around like he's, you know, some robot, and he falls over backwards, and they all just start laughing at the professor, which another piece of levity, which is much needed in this story. And so they figure it out, and then, you know, he calls them all ignorances, and the one doctor's like, yeah, long word, eh? Because they're all Canadian.
Not Canadian, right?
Yeah. So this was a very interesting scene to me. Another very effective scene where Cornelius is basically telling the professor he's shut down. He's not going to get up. We've got him where you want it. He's dead meat. And when he's on, he's a killing machine. So he says, if you don't believe me, spit in his eye and see if there's a reaction. And Cornelius leaves the room. And there's this panel where the professor is looking at the door. He looks down at Logan and he walks over to him. And Barry Windsor Smith has given us hints, or, he's shown us in several panels that this is hot coffee. And he pours the hot coffee on Logan's face. And he just sits and he looks, and there's absolutely no response from Logan. And this is the part where you realize that he has created this machine. He's created a monster.
Yeah. And it's just so sad. I mean, kind of going back to that panel before where Logan's just sitting there, right? And I don't know how many viewers in here have read Monsters, Barry Windsor Smith's 30-year fucking, masterpiece. But this scene right here, this scene, and I'm sure you can attest to this, right? Of where Professor's pouring the coffee on his face and he's just no reaction. It's almost reminiscent of when the army doctor soldier guys, whatever, in Monsters, where Bobby Bailey is sitting there. He's already a monster. He's already transformed, and they're sticking the American flags in his ears, and there's just nothing, right? And he's just there, right?
Yeah.
And he's got no choice but to just take it. And it's just so fucking sad, dude, that you have a guy with just no regard for human life or any life whatsoever, and then someone that we do love and someone that we do care about, this character that we've known for a long time, is just being completely disrespected and just looked at like nothing, right?
Yeah.
Really super sad.
And it's, there's
with a helmet on too in that pain. He does look like that like machine monster look to him.
Yeah, and then this is where we get it. This is the beginning of the helmet Weapon X. So, I honestly like the glossy trade paperback a little bit more. There's just a little, I like it and I don't. Like the shading on it's not great, but the colors pop.
Yes, I agree.
Like the blue, the blue shouldn't be all over Logan, but it is. But we'll still go with the trade paperback. So this is where we see the actual. This is what we would call Weapon X. This is him in his full Weapon X garb. But I always thought that this was such a evocative and such a strong image of Wolverine. Like, we know it's Wolverine, but it's not Wolverine. There's nothing about this that's Wolverine because he's being controlled. He's not, we don't know what he's seeing. They don't give us that. But he's butt ass naked. He's got some battery packs and a helmet. And there's this giant grizzly, and this thing is just, 12 and a half feet standing on its hind legs.
Yeah.
And you don't even need to see. And once again, Barry Windsor Smith does this thing where he doesn't show us anything. He shows us one swing, a double swing, and the bear's head is off. And
you see that whole fight though.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, you see the whole fight.
The whole thing.
Yep.
Yeah. And
and the hues are gorgeous. The purples and everything that just really, everything pops. And I think that gloss really makes it pop. I wanted to see.
Yeah,
I don't have it on hand to compare, but
yeah, it definitely it looks better in the trade paperback. Like, this looks more snowy,
sure.
But I really do think that this kind of just feels there's more to it.
It has that like nighttime horror like setting there.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that horror element that really ties that sci-fi and the superhero and everything beautifully packaged in for UWS here. So
yeah, and he just, and once again, this is not Wolverine, because we know that Wolverine would not attack unprovoked any animal. He just wouldn't. He's more animal than he is man, and he feels more. That's the one thing. Is like I think certain writers and I think Claremont definitely, obviously plays a huge part, but there's other writers too. I can't think of offhand, but you got Wolverine's the closest thing to an environmentalist in the mutant world than anybody, except maybe Namor. But I don't know, because I don't know Namor as much from the comics as I do.
No, not as much Wolverine for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So
that's
so yeah.
more Stan over here. Okay.
But yeah, you're right though. The Logan is removed, and this is post Terminator, so
right.
You do have that like kind of. I was always afraid of Terminator as a kid because it was just emotionless killing, and he has that brutality that has removed a lot of the characteristics we love about Logan has been removed and stripped away, and we're left with this. So I think that Dave, your whole horror theme on this is 100% pinpoint, and a lot of that kind of like emotionless killing and rage.
Yeah.
From a loved character, it hurts more when it's someone you love doing it. And so, as my favorite character killing, wolves against what he naturally would, and it would pain him to do so, it does show that he's been removed as kind of like that, more now becoming more machine than man.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But, as we'll see, and we know his humanity is what bounces back because, and it's not, it's not really stated, but his healing factor helps probably kick in his, his humanity, because it's part of your chemical.
That's true.
Your makeup, your psychological makeup is your humanity. And we know that Wolverine does struggle throughout the arc of his character in general with, his humanity, his berserker rage always, like when it happens and he does something awful and then he comes out of it, he's like, oh my God, again.
Right.
So they bring him back in, and I'm trying to think where we are.
He's shot for his Wolverine or Greedo.
I think it was C-3PO actually. So Cornelius is talking to Hines, and he's like, I don't like the sound of this right now. It's like, at first I'm told we're creating a super soldier from Experiment X. Then it turns out he's some sort of mutant animal thing. So the adamantium bonding sends him cuckoo. But the professor takes me around, pulls me into his game, got sucked in good there. I know it. Yeah. And he's just like talking to Hines, and Hines is just like,
right.
He tells the other scientists to get the fuck out of here. And basically says, I got your back to Cornelius, because they know that the professor is up to no good. And then we start seeing these interspersed panels of Wolverine waking up, and he starts skewering everybody.
So during what I kind of talked about earlier, that panel right there, the red one, right, the first one there, that's the first Snick you see in this.
That's right. There it is.
That's the first one you see. But also note this: that's the first time he advanced his claws willingly by himself
on his own volition. Volition,
right? Before that, it was all controlled by them, right? And so you weren't getting those snicks, right? Which I thought was a really, really cool way to kind of put that in there, because they're not doing, like I said earlier, they're not doing any of the other sort of kind of campy Wolverine things, right? This is the only kind of thing they do, and there you go, you snicked it right there. And because it's his own doing, right? They put it in there, and I thought that is such a cool detail, man.
Yeah. I didn't. You're pointing something out to me that I didn't notice.
And his consciousness looks, his eye.
His eyes. It just, there's so much conviction in those eyes, right? Of like, now I have a purpose. Now I know what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna make it happen now.
And I would just like to say, anybody watching, please hit snicked on the like button right now.
Yeah, snick that MF likey.
Yeah. So he pops the claws on his own volition. They are still having their conversation, and this is going on. The alarm goes, and you get the they put it up on the screen, and they start seeing Wolverine just going through and murdering as many people that gets in his way. And Professor starts figuring out what's going on, and he's saying this is not his doing, like he's not controlling, because Cornelius is basically saying, Professor, how could you do this? And the professor's like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
And then there's this page, which I don't, it didn't dawn on me the first time, but the second time I read this, which was, like in the last 2 days, it kind of gave me the imagery of aliens.
Yes, totally.
Like the Marines shooting
Yeah.
up the aliens as they're coming through the corridor.
Oh, yeah.
And, we all know that everybody's going to die.
Yeah.
Nobody survives because, you're just a nobody with a gun.
Right.
You're a nobody with a gun.
And you know what I like on this panel too? Well, for one, I like the
Awooga.
I love that for sure. And it's played throughout the rest of it, right? For the most part. But also on this particular page, right? This big one here, the way just the dimension, right, of how larger than life he looks and how those soldiers look so small. But then look at his shadow, right? Just completely towering over those shoulders, soldiers, right? And it's really cool because you already know, like I said earlier, we know what he's capable of. We know what he's gonna do, right? And these guys, they got no fucking clue yet, man.
Oh yeah, they're
the conversation too. What happened to your fail-safe, Professor? It isn't working.
yeah. No shit. It isn't working, I tell you. The next panel should just be no shit. So they're all panicking, and Wolverine's just going. He's going berserk, and they basically spend a couple pages panicking, and that's when the professor starts talking to somebody, but he leaves the intercom on, so Cornelius and Hines can hear him having this conversation, this very calm conversation, which is weird how calm it is. I am quite fine myself, thank you. Are you aware of what's happening at this time? And then, it's interspersed with John Byrne, aka Cornelius, saying, having a conversation with the guards, but they're currently shooting with tranq darts. And it's not doing anything because you could.
Yeah, one guy says, I got my men down there popping pea shooters.
Yeah, and the sound effect, the onomatopoeias.
Yeah.
It really, like, it is such a brilliantly structured comic. Like, there's no part of the action sequences that you don't kind of feel
right
or experience with them. But he's just tearing things up. We get a nice shot of Wolverine's butt.
That's a good shot.
Yeah, it's a good shot. It is.
I love how it goes from the pea shooters with your onomatopoeia until Logan savagely cutting that dude in half.
Yeah. Just
The tranq darts aren't working. But those claws are.
And so this is where Cornelius and Hines discover that he's like something's not right. Professor's talking to somebody and not really answering them, as Wolverine is just skewering everybody. But it's still such a wildly calm conversation that the professor's having with whoever is there on the end of the line. And this panel is he's like, there's just one thing. Let me ask, should I leave now or should I refuge here whilst, as you put it, Weapon X clears the dead wood? And that's it. Like, Wolverine senses him, smells him, and rips through the floor.
Yeah.
To go after Professor and the goon squad. All the guards come rushing in. It's just chaos. It's complete chaos, and he does chaos so well.
Really, really well. And I just love that, like, monochromatic, right? That long vertical panel there. Just that monochromatic, just pure red, right? Because we know the alarm's blazing, right? We see
red lights are usually synonymous with alarms.
Right, exactly. And it just, to Nick's point earlier, it just puts you there, man. It puts you there. And you feel this kind of anxiety the entire time you're reading this book because nothing good's going on there, right? And then you get to the climax here and your heart's pounding and you're like, oh my God, I gotta read this entire thing now, Yeah, and we get to this scene where they're all shooting it at Logan. You don't even see Logan. That's one thing that Barry Windsor Smith rarely shows you, is that, like, Logan getting shot up, even though it's happened a couple of times, but there's shell casings everywhere. The professor lost his glasses. Somebody puts them back on, and that's when he
the reveal that he is no longer with his I guess it's his left hand, I think. Yeah, his right hand. And it's obscured here, which is cool. Like, great. The reveal, comes 3 panels in, and so he says, destroy him, kill him, destroy Weapon X. And that is definitely the end of that issue, because I remember this very vividly being the first page of that, whatever number issue that is.
Yeah.
It's such, and it's the cover of your trade, right, Nick? Or is it? No, it's the cover of
his,
yours. Yeah. Such an iconic one. I like this version better because we get the lights. You get the red light.
Yeah.
But
the mountain.
It's like that on mine too on the pages, but on the cover it's a little bit different. They just colored the cover a bit different.
Okay. All right. Yeah. That makes more sense.
With that mountain of bodies he's standing on, though.
Insane. Absolutely insane.
It's so sick.
And just like the chaos in the room, I love how he does the bubbles on it, because it's everywhere all at once, like it would be, and so it does paint that being in that room of chaos with
for sure
Berserker and Logan.
And what I think is really cool too, just kind of a testament to his art, is the fact that all these bodies, I mean, we can pretty well distinguish for the most part, right? It's a shit ton of bodies for sure, but there's 3 colors he uses, right? Red, yellow, and black.
Yeah.
But right, so it should be, if you're using just that limited palette right there, it really should be kind of convoluted and kind of wouldn't really make any sense and kind of hard to kind of separate those things, I feel like. But he does a really good job at showing you just the mass of quantity of people that he just fucked up in there,
What you said earlier, Angel, was that like a lot of this you can read in any order, and this page you can read in any order.
Yes.
Because it is, like you said, Nick, it's just chaos. I do find it that like the couple of characters on this page that have a little bit lighter shade of lighting is the ones that are really in motion. It's Logan, it's the guy to the left of him, and it's the guy running out of the room. But yeah, he's the strength in his body to get that one guy
insane
with the claws above his head. I mean,
and then the dialogue, like, get back from him. And too late.
Right. Yeah. Who are you talking to, buddy?
Yeah.
Mountain of bodies in the room.
Right.
This is definitely one of the most iconic images from this book, for very good reasons. I mean, you could show this to somebody, and they're going to understand that it's Wolverine, and something, like this gives you a tone if you show this image of what this story is about and what's going to happen. So, Professor gets away. He's bleeding out. He should be dead because of the amount of blood he lost at this point, but he's holding it together. He's holding it together enough to still give orders. His control is never really lost. And so Wolverine has cleared the room. He is walking through dead bodies, and the sound effect is just blood and death. And there's one guy left, but not for long. He dispenses him pretty quick. And so they get behind this. They go to the reactor room or whatever it is. But I love this scene right here where Hines, get that gun, and so she picks it up. And she goes to hand it to the professor. And the professor's like, not me, you idiot. Hines, what can I do with it? It's just like, yeah, he's missing a fucking hand. What is he going to do with an assault rifle? So good. It's so good. Just a couple of moments of levity. That's all this book really could use. And that's what we get. This is his face in this. Like, I think actually it's very similar. It's very similar to what his face kind of looks like in this last piece.
But like what you said with the levity, because it goes from that right into walking in blood on the last page, the last panel.
Yeah.
He's walking in blood. It's the one page back. Sorry, Dave.
Yeah, this one.
It's just right walking through the blood of all the people. It goes right from that like little comedic bit straight back into that savagery. And horror and comedy are in bed together. So
yeah,
right,
yeah,
and it fits perfectly.
and then Cornelius, I forgot. Yeah, Cornelius says, "What's going on here, Professor? Just what do you think I'm going to do with this rifle?" Kind of pointing out what everybody's already pointed out, that shooting him does nothing.
Right.
You have now given you've turned this person into an animal, a killing machine, and one that you already know heals immediately and now has a skeleton laced with the hardest metal on the planet. Guns aren't going to do anything. And so Professor is kind of like, I'm dead. But they tourniquet his arm up, and they kind of, you see Wolverine, he's making his way through, he's hunting. That's what he does. He's just going to animal instincts, and so the Professor kind of gets on the intercom and goes, "Are you surprised that Logan didn't kill me?" He's talking to this other person, but they're not responding. The person that he's been talking to the whole time is no longer responding, and he starts panicking. The lighting on this panel right here, with the glasses and the buttons being reflected in the Professor's glasses, who's like sweating profusely because his arm is severed, and then Cornelius, you just see the lighting on his face and a little bit of that computer reflected in his glasses. It's just like everybody keeps saying, it's a mastered class.
Yes.
In artistry. It really is.
Absolutely. So I have a question, okay, not that panel, but the panel next to it, right, where now he's clawing at that door. I remember reading something, it was a while ago. Was it Days of Future Past? I can't remember what it was. I read something that was obviously not the weapon. Oh, it couldn't have been Days of Future Past. That came out before this did. So it must have been sometime after. But Wolverine, and maybe someone in the room knows. Oh, you know what? I think it might have been the Wolverine story that who was writing it is during the Hickman era. He goes somewhere and he sees this door. He goes to this building and there's a panel with that biohazard kind of thing, and there's 3 claw marks on it, and then he says something, "Oh, just someplace I used to know," to whoever he was traveling with. I can't remember.
Interesting.
But it's a callback to this. I'll figure out what it is, but if anyone in the chat knows, that'd be awesome to hear. Okay. I know for sure it happened. I read it maybe about a year or 2 ago.
Well, they did something like that too. I think in X2, when he goes to Alkali Lake, I believe there's like some mark or some remnants of him leaving some marks on the facility. But he's literally clawing through the fucking walls. Like, he's clawing through the door. You see him literally getting through wires, and they're just, he cuts the power off and they all start freaking out. Also very reminiscent of Aliens, this scene in Aliens where like everything's just kind of going haywire, and the aliens are in the walls, and it's just.
See, I got like a bit of Freddy Krueger.
Yeah,
he's dragging his knives across the metal pipes.
Yeah, there's that too.
He's playing with his prey there, because that's why I like the detail on the metal shavings on the claw, because it's showing he's deliberately like scratching and pulling that paint off, and he's playing with his prey now, and I think that's really cool, because it is that animalistic, like it's just I'm going to kill you, and there's nothing you can really do about it. And man, it would be terrifying to be on the other side of it.
Sure is. And so they get into he's clawing through the wall. They're talking about how the turbines for the adamantium reactor shut down, and that's where the Professor kind of comes up with this idea. I think that's where he kind of forms this idea, but it's too late, because the animal bursts in the room.
God, that page is so fucking good.
I know. Look at his hair. It is. It's the this is like the like the what's the word I'm looking for? The pinnacle. This is where the full-blown horror of this horror story really comes into play, because this is no longer even Logan. This is an animal. This is the Wolverine.
Yeah.
You know, this is the Wolverine at the adjective, you know, like as an adjective too, not just a name, but uh, you know, professor's like shoot, and that's where Cornelius points out, like, he's not attacking, he's actually about to just pass out,
Right.
And the professor smacks him right in the back, and you know, he just starts shooting as a reflex action because he's an idiot that doesn't know how to hold a gun.
Oh, God.
And he starts shooting at Wolverine. The book, Lamar points out the book turns into the professor now being hunted. Yeah, it turns into, you know, this is the third act, and
yeah, and I think this scene right here is really unfortunate too, because I mean, you really just throughout the whole entire book, I mean, up to this point too, the professor's really just bullying everyone around, and really throwing his weight around, right? And Cornelius is, at first he was taking it on the chin for sure, and then you kind of see him start pushing back a little bit, right, with the sarcastic remarks and all these other things, right? And then, but now he's so frightened, he's so scared, and the professor just fucking hits him in the back of the head. He shoots, and so and Hines kind of talks about it later, but I think that Wolverine's reaction, which we'll see on the next page, was purely based off this one accident that should not have happened.
Oh, it definitely
right?
was.
And you start feeling bad for Cornelius because you actually start liking him once he kind of comes around, which happened a couple pages back. You start feeling his humanity. We already know that professor, that's a lost cause. That's out. That guy's a piece of shit, right?
Yeah.
But Cornelius, you really start feeling for him in the fact that, like, he didn't sign up for all this.
Yeah.
He didn't want to do all these things, but it's a paycheck. We know from the beginning of the story that he was outcasted or shunned from
impossible to get a job,
right? Couldn't find a job, right? Whatever, and FBI was looking for him or whatever the hell else. So he was really just a guy trying to get back on his feet, right? And now he's stuck in this predicament because of this professor guy who doesn't have any regard for anybody. And look what happens on the next page, you know?
Yeah. Oh God, the force that Wolverine hits him with probably broke, broke his ribs, destroyed his internal organs, and then also, he skewers him. Yeah. Brady, have a great night. Always a pleasure, my friend.
That uppercut, though, is one of my favorite panels.
It's really good.
It's so good. It's just another in motion, just the slumped over the fist. Yeah. He's so good at drawing that.
Yeah, it's like the same thing with the wolf, right? You feel that weight. You know, you see the gravity trying to pull him down, and Wolverine just completely counteracting that gravity and just pushing him right back.
And weirdly, I don't know if you can get close up on Wolverine's face in that panel, but I love his face, and this is just kind of like that kind of like judgment. You're getting what you deserve. You just shot me.
Yeah.
It's just that, like, well, now you died too kind of look. Like East Bay was saying, maybe he wouldn't have gotten that fist to death, but.
Well, they already I thought they talked about it, or maybe it's after this, but I thought there was a conversation where they talked about that he was just hunting the professor. Like he wasn't hunting them.
There is it's the twist at the end.
Yeah. And there's some great Barry Windsor Smith flames as things start to catch fire, and he's not done though. Like he's still holding him up. Everybody, they're running away, and he's like, just the blood. He's draining him. He's put a softball-sized hole in Cornelius, and the blood's just pouring out.
Poor Cornelius.
He slams him down, and so. We get a little so now the narrative kind of like shifts a little bit. I couldn't help him even if I wanted to. I must get to the reactor. So we're getting a little bit of the professor's thoughts or dialogue. Oh, you know what? That's dialogue, I think. It's off-screen dialogue. So they go to the reactor. They're trying to, stop the reactor. And that's always a good trope to use. Like there's like not Terminator. What movie used a reactor to kill, to burn or kill somebody? I
think that was Terminator, right? Terminator 2, I think. Where he goes in the vat.
Well, that was a lot. Right. It's always like lead him to here, and then push him in, or stuff. Oh no, it was Alien 3 with the lead works in the prison.
Oh right, yeah.
Get the alien into the thing and pour the lead, but either way, it's that's the I don't know what the term is. Not Arkham's razor, not
You're gonna drive yourself crazy.
Chekhov's reactor. Anyway, so this is the interesting part. This is where it shifts a little bit.
Yes.
Because this is where you start to get Logan starts to come back to himself. And he says, I know this man in a memory, in a dream of dying. And he's talking about Cornelius. And I believe, do we get an image of Cornelius at the beginning at all dead?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. But I think it's kind of interesting that's how it comes back.
I love the eyeglasses with
yeah
running away, that reflection.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of interesting things that happen towards the end of this where, like I said, Wolverine starts kind of thinking for himself, or at least that's what we're led to believe. And obviously the professor's just proving that he's a giant piece of shit over and over again, pushing Hines in to the reactor as bait.
Right.
And
then telling him to scream to lure him in.
Yeah. And I love, he's like, don't break your neck, dear lady. What an asshole.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. You're at this point, like, Logan's still the hero that we know and love, and we're just kind of rooting for him to hurry the hell up and kill this dude already.
Yeah, exactly. Smokey collects essentially both movies about a molten metal killing a bad guy. Exactly. That is it's the 90s in a nutshell.
Yeah.
You're running away from Wolverine. You still have time to monologue while you kill that lady.
Of course.
Like, that's how evil you are. It's just like, I have to get that in there. I really should be running, but one last comment.
But I'm gonna yell, "Don't break your neck, lady!"
That's like total James Bond villain shit, right?
and it continues too, because he runs up the stairs, because I want you to scream and yell and draw the beast into the pit. Like, come on, dude.
Right.
Jesus.
Yeah.
And he's still monologuing, Nick. He's still monologuing throughout this entire thing. Yeah, it is. And once again, the lighting behind Wolverine with the explosion, the lighting on Professor's face before he starts the reactor. And so Hines is begging, Hines is pleading. And she's like, kill me quickly. And Wolverine's like, this is where he starts to get his humanity back, right here.
Mm-hmm.
You don't matter to me. I want, and then looks up at Cornelius. And as Cornelius opens the fission gate and molten adamantium starts raining down, Hines is like, run, tells Logan to run, but instead he just, oh God, he starts burning. And there's the beautiful horror that Windsor Smith draws in that flame, and the red skin that it's singeing his skin.
Right.
But a good Wolverine is hard to kill, and he is on fire. Like, I think we can use our imaginations and realize that that's not skin anymore. That's like muscle tissue.
Totally.
And Cornelius, the professor, the reflection of the claws in his eyes, you just want it to happen.
Absolutely. And I think even before that too, right? The panels up above, we see Logan climbing up, right, on fire, skin completely gone, right? Climbing up those rebar steps of this reactor pit, right? And the way that heat transfers, especially on metal, right? When you weld things, right, because I have to weld stuff at work, you see the coloring start to change on certain metals, and you're seeing that here, right? His body is so hot, and these flames are so hot from this reactor that it's actually changing the color, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was actually bending those things, right?
Or melting them off completely.
Melting them off, right? So it's really, really, really cool. And at first, and you can't really tell in the first panel, the one to the left-hand side, the middle panel, middle left-hand, you can't really tell that it's him climbing up there. And then really on the second one, you can't really either, but you can kind of see the shapes of his feet.
But that's 2 feet. Yeah.
Put together, right? Exactly.
But that's got like that Hitchcock Psycho, when the knife's in the mirror right before he kills her.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah,
Then
yeah,
that like
Oh, yeah.
man, it's just such a cool, especially since you're wanting him to do it.
Right.
Like it's there, and
Right.
but also that horror's still there, and
yeah. This is, I mean, he is literally melting, and he's still alive. He's still trying to kill the professor, and he goes through the window. He jumps right through the window at him. He says, "Am I dead? Is that what you've done to me?"
That's so fucking sad, dude.
Yeah, like he doesn't know, but he's coming back because once again, the healing factor will piece him, every part of him back together, whether it's physical or mental.
Right.
The as his brain kind of starts to come away from it, it starts healing.
Right.
But there you go. He says, "Am I dead? Am I a walking dead man?" And he says, and the professor says, "You are an animal." And he gets corrected. "I am Logan." And that's the moment where we get to see him starting to come back to him. And he doesn't want to just kill the professor right away. He wants to make him suffer.
yeah, and,
As it
like
should.
one set of claws out and one not too, like you had said earlier with the controlling.
Yeah.
He's showing in a pure rage moment a lot of control, and just he has a plan, and he's exacting it. It's not just as much like that, like when he was going through those animal instincts, and now he's not reacting to those instincts like he was in the previous panels where he's just eviscerating everyone.
Yeah.
Now here he has it out, but also withdrawn too.
Yeah. To use that one hand to throw him around, and we get the professor just screaming for help, but everybody's dead. Literally everybody is dead.
Yeah.
And then Wolverine just takes his other hand out. Probably the most brutal. I think this is the most brutal moment of all the brutality. I think this is the most brutal moment of Weapon X, is him, because we know that his claws don't cut.
Right.
He went like this, like he eviscerated.
Fuck.
Yeah, and I think
and you can really see the pain on Professor's face too, right? If you want to zoom in on that,
you could see the brow. The brow shows it.
Yeah, look at him, man. Oh my god.
And
I'm probably just terrified, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then Wolverine says, "Now we both got our paddles bollocksed," which that it's true, because like they opened up Wolverine's hands. And obviously heal back together. So he says, "Do you think that makes us even?" And Wolverine and Logan says, "Well, don't." And you don't need to see the process of what we already know is about to happen. You see the one claw start to come out here in the top left on the top,
right.
And then we look at Wolverine's face, and it starts off like he's almost apathetic, but you could see when he starts gritting his teeth that he is, this is the rage. This is the inner rage. This is not the berserker rage. This is the revenge. And he puts those claws right where we knew he was going to put them, right through his fucking face.
Too, right? Each of those three panels, right? Because the panel layout's really cool on that page too. You have the top one, the bottom one, which is the same size as those three vertical ones there in the middle. And each of those three vertical ones are representing one claw.
One claw popping
at a time. And it's not to that third one when you get the full snicked again, right? And I think a really cool detail also is that first panel there. You see a couple drops of blood kind of
flick out
on his face. Second one a little bit more, and the third one, right? Those teeth just gritting, like you said, and just his face just specked with blood. And then that bottom one, Jesus Christ, man! I mean, everything that you wanted to happen, but in a way where it's so brutal, where you're like, man, maybe I didn't need to watch that. Right?
I always thought this was interesting too, that he's carrying his body.
Yeah.
And it's just, Windsor Smith does, he's just, there's motion in here, and he's not really showing, but we know it's just the way that the camera, it's moving towards the camera from that perspective of the broken, shattered window. And, he just dumps his lifeless body into the flames, which, and we're done. And so it just, I love this. The only time I think that the 9-panel grid is used in this book.
I think so too. Yeah.
super effective.
Mhm.
Super effective.
Mhm. Yeah,
Also,
I feel like he chooses his panels very well. There's a lot of Barry stuff that I enjoy where he used the 9-panel layout with no dialogue, because that's kind of like his thing, is doing the 9 panels with no dialogue,
yeah,
piecing together the story from there. And he picks and chooses where he wants it, and I think this was a really, really good placement of that style.
Nick, to come back to your Terminator 2.
There you go.
Did James Cameron look at this when he was storyboarding the end of Terminator 2? Maybe
I
a
mean,
little bit.
It looks identical.
Yeah, or Alien 3 when Ripley dives into the reactor. What the hell is it about the 90s and molten liquids?
We were big on them.
Yeah, we were. We were.
were.
So then we get to the next page with these black 3 panels and some machinery going on, and we get Logan waking up, and Mr. Logan, I don't know if you can understand me. Use your imagination. Think of the horror of it all. And so there's a lot of weirdness. I don't know what's going on here. But there is some exterior voice that's not Logan's.
Yeah, so all of these captions, from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, you'll find these throughout the book beforehand. So these are all words that have already been said that we've already read.
Okay.
So these are all fragments of memories that he's kind of going through again, that are kind of popping up in his head, right? Because he's just kind of waking up from this berserker shit that he just did, right? That's what he's waking up from, and you'll tell on that page there by that severed hand on that keyboard, right?
Yeah.
But all those caption boxes there, all those word boxes there, we've already read those words from different characters, right? There's some words, some dialogue from Hines, some dialogue from Cornelius, but we've see Mr. Logan has shown his uncanny tracking abilities. Hines said that about 4 issues ago.
Yeah, and the only new dialogue is, I guess, what Wolverine's saying.
Correct. Yeah, that's right.
And so he's just kind of going through it, trying to figure out what's going on, and he looks at his hands, and then the reveal. He flips them over, and there are the terminals.
Yep.
And here come the claws right out, and he just pops. He says, "Am I dead? Am I a walking dead man?" He flashes to Professor's face, and the claws come out. There's blood everywhere, and he's just freaking out again, and he starts running with the claws popped into this dream sequence, into this nightmare. It's a nightmare sequence. This isn't a dream.
It's a nightmare sequence, dude. And it's really, really good, and it's very kind of thought-provoking and very emotional.
Yeah.
It reads like the lyrics to Metallica.
Darkness imprisoning me. I can't get away. I must run forever. Fight forever. Never give in. The beast.
Yeah. I like to think of it, and I think this can be all interpreted how you want to interpret it, right? But when I see this kind of nightmare sequence here, I think it's a lot of guilt. Not really guilt of his own, but guilt from other people, making him feel like an animal, making him feel like less than, right? Because he's talking about this shadow that's always over him and always chasing him and is never letting up, right? And that really is his, like, just outcastness, and the fact that he is so much more, and to a lot of people he's less than, right? And I think it's a lot of, it ties into the berserker thing. It ties into being feral, right? And those kind of thoughts haunt him as a character, right? And we know this because we've seen this character throughout the years, but it's really good. And even down to the colors that are being used, man. I mean, they're just such oddball, kind of out there colors, right? You have that blue background with pink body and some negative space there. Just out of this world, man. Out of this world art.
It's the only way he can convey the kind of manic dream nightmare that he's going through, and it works. It's very effective. But then Nick,
and being very aware now of that beast he just was, and how it's calling him back to just kind of stay in that state, and he's fighting it off almost at his consciousness. It's
trauma. He's experiencing trauma as it's happening and after it's happening, and the nerve endings, like you said, it's still very evocative, and it comes through right here where he's giving in to the animal, it's taking back over, and shot through like steel in the heart, caving in under the weight of the beast. And there we go. We get to the just, opens up on this triple panel of the Bengal tiger that they mentioned earlier before.
Yeah.
That was the other thing. There was that one line that they said something about like,
what's the most terrifying thing chasing you or something like that?
Yeah, and it's a Bengal tiger with a stick up its ass.
Yeah.
And I forgot to point that part out, but then here we are. The Bengal tiger, I don't know if there's a stick in its ass, but doesn't look like it.
Yeah,
but,
you know what's funny is I checked actually when I was I was checking because they actually correct them. So we'll get into what this sequence is now. It's pretty intense.
Andrew points out it's heavy trauma and an out of body experience
Oh,
caused. Both of those things are causations of each other, kind of. But yeah, we get to this. He's just all of a sudden outside in the snow. There's a Bengal tiger. We go back to now we're starting to see the dialogue from Cornelius and the professor and Hines that we were seeing this whole issue, and we're not sure what's going on. You go from what just happened to that transformation to this scene, and Wolverine once again butt ass naked. Just this is it. This is the feral beast, and he's fighting this tiger, and there's a lot of the dialogue bubbles going on, but it takes 2 or 3 tussles, and he eviscerates this thing.
Right. I mean, this fight sequence is really, really good because we're not really seeing a lot of it from start to finish, but this one we kind of did actually. And it was good for the story. I feel like. Yeah,
to see the blow by blow because it's like 3 blows and then it's over, and he tears its rib cage out. He does the same thing to the Bengal tiger that he did to that first scientist.
Yeah, the day one boys.
Yeah, day one, day none. And this is the reveal that we are not what we just saw. None of it was real.
Yeah.
They all they constructed that scene.
Yeah, that's right.
And Wolverine thought he went through this whole scene, but he didn't.
Yeah.
And that's the MacGuffin. That's the reveal. And they jammed his psyche full of. So I'd say they're talking. You underestimated your prize, Professor. Logan was set up. We gave him a chance to escape, but he didn't run. Instead, he turned around and brutalized a lot of us. Then we jammed his psyche with his fear of mutinism, which is that out-of-body experience we saw. Right. And it didn't faze him. And then he came through and killed the tiger. So this is the reveal of where the only reason why he went after the professor. He didn't actually go after the rest of them. They were all just in his way. Want to feel like a pink Wolverine? Do salvia.
Yeah,
fair enough. Or well, I could talk about the other things you could do to feel that way, but this is a family program.
Yeah.
But I felt like a pink Wolverine multiple times in my life. Let's just say that. So yeah, out of hunger, but really it was because they got in his way. And then Hines points out, I think Mr. Logan only killed you. I love how she still calls him Mr. Logan. I think Mr. Logan only killed you because of the accidental shooting. Yeah. And so he eviscerates the tiger. Here's your callback or your call forward to that sentinel working security guard.
Right.
And they go to take him in, and all he does is pop the claws.
Right.
We don't have to see anything else. We already know what's about to happen. And so we don't see anything else except for 2 guards eviscerated and Wolverine walking away in the snow. And they're panicking. Security, where's Logan? Wranglers have got him. Oh, no, they're not panicking. I'm sorry. And they're just asking where he is because they don't see him. And there it goes. There goes the Auga once again. And the cool thing about this is we already know how the Awuga plays out. We don't need to see it again. We already know what's happening. He is eviscerating every single security guard between where he was and where Professor Cornelius and Hines are.
For sure.
And here comes Freddy Krueger, or here comes a Velociraptor. Insert whatever legendary classic horror trope that we love and know, and he just comes right through that door like it was paper mache.
Right.
Mel Gibson.
There he is. Yeah, Mel Gibson.
For sure. Yeah, that door is shredded, dude.
Yeah.
It is. It's almost as shredded as Wolverine is.
Right. That boy.
By the way, one other thing to point out about Logan Wolverine, he has been covered in blood through almost this whole series. Through almost the whole thing. Like there was never a Wolverine story to this point where it has been this bloody, this violent.
Right. I agree.
This broke ground. So there you go. He rips through the door, Hines' face, she just shit her pants.
Yeah.
Cornelius just shit himself, and Professor just shit everybody's pants.
Yeah, but you know what? But if you look at Professor's face, right, and it might be because we can't see his eyeballs, but
yeah, he looks.
He's still kind of gritting a little bit, right? Like he has disdain for this monster.
He looks angry.
Yeah, he looks mad, right? Like, God damn it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas the other two, yeah, they're totally. I mean, they're done for. They're like, oh yeah, no, we're dead. We're done.
So what do you think? Do you think he kills all three of them?
No,
I assume he does actually.
Yeah, you know what? I probably more than likely, just because they all were co-conspirators and putting him through all that. But I would like to think not. I would like to think that Hines is safe. Cornelius, yeah. I do love Cornelius, but whatever, he can die too. That's fine. But he probably killed all three.
Well, if he's going off his memories too,
yeah,
and what and the trauma he just lived through that they just put him through.
Yeah,
right.
The trauma they created for him to control him, it doesn't depict them well.
Yeah,
so I think Hines does live though.
I think so too. Well, it's hard to say, right? So if you turn the next, you're not done, right? You still have the interlude in there.
Yeah,
okay.
The interlude and escape. Yeah.
Okay, so also real quick on this page here, how Mobius is that?
Oh, it's so Mobius. Like
right?
This is a Mobius page right here.
Absolutely,
100%.
If I found out on my deathbed that Mobius did this, I would die a happy man. I'd be like, yeah. I called it.
Yeah, it's beautiful because it's like it's just so abstract. But
Absolutely.
do you know what it is? Because I just realized what it is. It's the Northern Lights.
Yeah. I just when you asked me, I just realized that right now.
I just dawned on me. It just
so
dawned on me because of the way that it's all right. So Lamar thinks that Hines lives. Mattis thinks that he kills them all. And Smokey Collect says he leaves someone alive because there's a story in one of the other volumes of Wolverine where he gathers together a bunch of people that will reach herd. I'm not sure what that turn of phrase is, but of the year families. Okay, all right. So there is continuation. Oh, that Wolverine hurt. Okay, there's a bunch of people that Wolverine hurt. Okay. So that's interesting. Yeah, I read Wolverine until probably I was 17, 18. So I read, like the first 70, probably 100 something issues. Then I picked it up here and there, but I never stayed current with all the storylines. So I don't know if they ever went back to some of these people. So let's just say he leaves Hines alive because he sure as hell didn't leave the Professor alive.
Well, I know for a fact at least one person died.
Yeah.
And that's evident with the very last panel. That's right. So if you skip we know one person died at the very least, right? They don't show multiple hands there on that very last panel, but so we know one person is for sure dead.
So this interlude and escape is such an amazing piece of like 3 pages, just such an amazing use, or 4 pages. But it's a conversation between Hines and Cornelius about what they're doing and how they feel about doing what they did. And so she says, did Logan volunteer for this? No. Was he abducted? Yes. Mr. Logan was forced into this. And then Cornelius says, I don't know about forced, Hines. See, if you listen to the Professor, it's like this is all kind of preordained, like Logan's destiny or something. And that's such an interesting thing because if we go back to the beginning and we look at the visions that he's having in this dream,
Yeah.
then maybe this is all happening before the weapon, before he gets abducted, and he truly is kind of seeing a piece of his future,
Yeah.
of what's about to happen, because it's his, maybe his destiny. So I thought that was interesting reading this, but him covered in snow and frozen,
Yeah.
and the snow,
It's really beautiful.
it is. And so yeah, and you get more Mobius at the end, and then a piece of machinery that was attached to Logan, and a bloody hand is the last panel.
So good.
Yeah, it is.
It really is. It really is a beautiful story, and it's just like we keep saying. We can hype up Barry Windsor all we want, but I mean, just read his stuff, right? Read this, read Monsters, read anything he's ever put out there. I can't say that because I haven't read Conan, but
the Red Nails trilogy is. I'll send you a copy. I actually have I think I have an extra copy of like a collected thing.
Hell yeah, okay, please, yeah, thank you. But no, it's just he just is such a great storyteller, man. And I can read this, and I'll probably read it again and again and again. This is I must have read this thing altogether maybe 10 times. And it just gets better every single time.
Yeah, it doesn't lose anything. It does get better. It's there is no there's no diminishing returns on this. Every time you read it, you're going to gain something. You're going to gain it. Like, for example, granted, I didn't read every piece of text in it tonight. I read it twice this weekend, and just now, there goes the binding on this is fucked. I just realized that this was the Northern Lights.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
That's sweet.
Yeah. Lamar says Hines still calls him Mr. Logan, which to me seems like she still sees him as human and not an experiment monster, so he lets her live. That would make the most sense because he didn't try and kill her at any point.
Right.
But the end just to me is like, but he might have realized the trauma that they all just put him through.
Right.
And so maybe he did decide to take them all out. By the way, thank you, Captain Crockpot. This has been a great show. We're going to talk a little more, but why don't we do this? I did promise for the people that took part in this, I'm going to give this away. This is a New Mutants. Yeah, New Mutants. Yeah, it's a New Mutants 98. First appearance of Deadpool. Yeah. This is a Marvel Comics.
Good luck, everybody.
This is a Marvel Comics Presents 7285 newsstand. I'm going to give this away. Everybody in the chat, please don't invite anybody else in here because this is for people that were involved. Hashtag, and you guys, Nick and Angel, feel free to take part of this. Hashtag Weapon X. Type it in, and I'll draw a winner, and I'll ship this to you for free of charge. Just to thank you for being a part of this, of this book club. And sorry, I didn't mean to tease you. I looked at this and I said New Mutants. I don't know why. I have no clue why I said New Mutants.
I'm just pumped to be here because this was such a important, run for me because, Wolverine being my favorite character, I think that what built him up and that trauma that had to exist for him to be the ultimate version of himself, for him to be able to stop the amount of villains he does, for him to be able to save as many people as he does, he had to suffer to the purest form of suffering. He had to be taken to a place that no one ever can be taken to because he can't be killed like that. So he had to die how many times that a human would die in order to be created into like some superhero. And it gives a lot of depth to his character. He's not just Wolverine. He has all of this trauma that he's had to live through and consistently deal with through all, most of the runs he deals. I mean, all of it really is the constant flashback to a lot of that trauma he suffered.
Sure.
And just that life. I can imagine, never having that peace because you're such a perfect weapon. Right. And I think it's displayed so beautifully in this run. So I really appreciate you inviting me out here.
Of course. Yeah. This story, this book, this character's been with me since I was collecting comics, reading comics for the first time, and in the late 80s. I think I started collecting Wolverine probably within the first 15 issues, and then I went back and got everything. But when this came out, and I don't think my friend Seth is in here, but like I said, I grew up with him. He's my childhood friend, and when this came out, we were just blown away. And like all of our friends at school, like I had a decent amount of friends that read comics, and we were all just like, "Holy shit, we're getting this story for Wolverine!" And it's just like weird art. And I honestly, I know I did not appreciate Barry Windsor Smith's art and his style when I first read this, but obviously as time goes on, you start to realize how much of a genius he is. But reading this after reading Monsters and realizing, and then also I read Life Death also very recently, and just realizing how much he deals with the inner working of what trauma does. And like you said, Nick, I never looked at it that way. Like, he had to die and die so many times before he became this weapon.
That was really profound, Nick. I like that. I never thought about it that way either.
But in the end, his humanity is what won. His humanity always comes back because he truly is like a very, very humane person, always skewing towards the humanity of animals over people, but
which would make sense too with the apocalypse theory.
Why
that didn't work for Apocalypse. Why that. Why he couldn't really be a four horseman, because he does have that care there that wouldn't. It would be required to be I guess completely inept of that emotion in order to be a four horseman. To actually carry out part of the apocalypse. So.
Sure.
Well,
sure.
I think a good parallel to that is, and I don't know how much modern stuff you guys have read over the last couple of years, but when Wolverine was coming out, the recent run, or I think it might still be coming out, but there was a character called Solemn. I think that was his name. I can't remember his name, but he's kind of like Wolverine, but from a different. So it was basically when you had Krakoa and another. I don't want to say a plane of existence, but basically Krakoa and another island, essentially, or whatever. They were basically one, and then they got split by Apocalypse and the Horsemen. But on that one, I can't remember the name of it. Came a character called Solemn, and he was kind of like the parallel to Wolverine, but without having that humanity, which I thought was really interesting and really cool. So if you guys can kind of read up on that character, I believe that's his name, Solemn. I think he came out in Wolverine 10, I think.
I believe you're correct.
2020, I think.
Okay.
But it's also
he has adamantium skin apparently.
Because I think that was just last year, right?
Yeah, I think last year or 2 years ago or something like that. Yeah. But also, all of us forgot to mention the fact that, which I think is so fitting for Barry to write this story, because he actually penciled the issue of Adamantium's first appearance in Avengers 66. Which is so cool and so like full circle, I think, for him. Right. And I feel like everything with Barry Windsor Smith is like full circle, right? With like the monster story and now this, and it's really neat. And I think what better person to do this story than him, right? Someone who can take the duality of that yin and yang of good and bad and all these other things, and kind of mesh them together and put them in the way that Barry does. And he offered a beautiful story. Like I said in the very beginning of this 2.5 hours ago, that stands the test of time and is something that readers can pick up at any point in time and have fun with it and pass it down, right? It's really, really good. And he knocked it out the park, man. There's not many people that can do it like Barry Windsor Smith, man.
No.
Yeah, I mean, you're what he's doing too, giving a lot of origin to an insanely popular character. This is dangerous territory for a lot of artists and writers, and
the most popular character at that time. There was nobody in comics that was more popular than Wolverine in the late 80s through pretty much the entire 90s.
Yeah.
Like nobody.
Absolutely. And I think what's really sick too, and just from looking at the slab that's on there right now, and I forgot to mention this earlier, but obviously we don't have Wolverine yet, right? Throughout this Weapon X story, Wolverine didn't exist, right? It was just Logan. Right. And I think it's really cool. The cover of the start of the storyline, which is that one there, Marvel Comics at 72, you see the transition of the uniform that we know and love, and transitioning, right? And then to how he looks for the rest of the series, the rest of the next series. And I thought that was really dope, because it's basically like we're throwing this off and we're giving you a whole new. That's so funny. I was gonna wear my shirt too, but I was
you
there's no way he's not gonna wear his. I'm not gonna make him on a game show.
But to continue your point, East Bay, though, like that's what I was saying was like stripped away from everything we know of Wolverine. Like here's this trauma. Like here's
this horror story.
This is it. This is what built your favorite dude out there.
Right, absolutely.
And so I think it's important too because a lot of our heroes we don't realize that even in real life heroes the trauma that they carry with them that we never see because
I mean it's like that
heroes, we don't ask about it, we don't think about it, we don't what did this do to our hero,
right? It's like that Smokey Robinson song, right? Like Tears of the Clown. It's like the person who's laughing the most in the room, you never know what they're going through, you never know what kind of shit they're going through, why they're trying to put smiles on everyone else's faces because they're probably going through some tough shit. So that same idea. But that's a good point, man. That's really cool. I never thought about that about Wolverine. That's really, really cool.
There they are.
There they are. So thanks. Thanks for joining, Spiders. You're only 2.5 hours late. We're talking about Weapon X, and we're almost done. I only have 8 people in for the giveaway.
Actually, hold on, because I even got
Nick. Oh, there you go. See?
He's got the beard too, so.
Nick and Angel, I do not see you entering this giveaway.
That's all good, man.
No, we don't want it.
You don't want it. All right, I'll just crack.
It's gotta go to the people who sat here and listened to me.
That's right.
Yeah, the people that sat and listened. But overall, just I can't think, and maybe somebody can point out a character that this applies to also, but I can't think of a character that has been around for as long as he was at this time, which is 26 years or what. So no, sorry, like
right.
No, it's less. It's like 17, but
75 to 90.
But you think about all these popular characters that had their origin stories when they appeared. Batman, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four. His origin story happens 16, 17 years into the existence of his of him. So all right, well, I'm going to do the giveaway right now because there's 9 people, and the 9 people that entered are probably the 9 people that were here the whole time. So let's give this away. I'm going to share the screen, and this is just my token of appreciation for people that took part in the book club.
It's a beautiful slab too.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
It is a beautiful slab to have.
All right, let's see who's going to win it.
The Nerds Pub, what? Oh, no, just kidding.
Jay won it. Jay. There we go.
Congratulations, Jay. That's awesome. Good win.
All right. Well, Jay won this slab, and that's just like I said, a thank you for being a part of the book club and that. So I don't. We'll wrap it up in just a sec, but I do want to put this to the chat and to you guys. So this morning I released a video about a little preamble to this specific book club, but I went through some of the stuff that I want to do in the next 6 months. And I'm putting it to the chat, to anybody that's watching. Watch that video and throw a comment there of what your top vote is. Like, I know Lamar wants to do The Crow, Mr. No Love, and I think that'll be a good thing to do because I want to do the book and I want to do the movie. I want to do a double.
That's cool.
So we do one talk about the book and the movie because the movie is very close. It's very close to the book. The trade paperback's easy to find. It's everywhere. So that's definitely going to happen. But yeah, throw a comment at that video. Tell me what you think I should do next. But I'll tell you what it is right now. We got God Country, so I know that's Nick's vote. We got Infinity Gauntlet. We have The Crow. We have The Watchmen, which will be over 2 months. And I forget what else I did. Long Halloween and something else. I can't remember. But
if you have not read this,
God Country
you
is
have
shit.
To. It's not long. I think it's 6 issues.
Yeah, it's 5 or 6 issues, and it's just
it's a 1 hour sit down and really just they knock it out of the ballpark. But,
I gotta read it. I haven't read it.
Yeah,
another one that's great for mental health awareness too. It's really cool. in positive light in how they show that. So
Yeah, and it deals a lot with family. If you have any kind of family, not I wouldn't even say trauma, just family issues. It's a good book to read.
Am I gonna cry? You know how much of a crybaby I am. Am I gonna cry?
You both were talking at the same time, so
go ahead, Isha.
I say, am I gonna cry? You know how much of a crybaby?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll console you in another separate video call.
Yeah, that'll be different. That'll be different. Yeah. Big B said it's in the Frank Miller first issue of the miniseries. The bear that was poisoned by the hunter's arrows and driven insane, and Wolverine doesn't want. Exactly. That's one of the examples. I couldn't remember the specific issue, but the thing about Wolverine that people don't really talk about is that he is like an environmentalist. He's more in tune with the earth than most of the characters in the Marvel universe. Crow One. He had a Crow One that he posted today, a 9.6 for sale. Have a great night, Amber. So I recommend anybody that hasn't read this yet, pick up the trade. They're releasing a new hardcover
this month, I think.
This month, yeah.
I'm so stoked.
But besides that, as a compendium to reading this, pick up Monsters. This is a $40 cover price on this beautiful 400-page hardcover book, and you're going to be supporting Fantagraphics or your local comic book store when you buy this. And this is like Barry Windsor Smith. If you were, when we're talking about him long after, years from now, it's going to be these two things that come to our lips first. Yep. And then, so many other great stories, not necessarily a great character, but Nature Girl's way more. I don't know who Nature Girl is. Is that like Squirrel Girl's sister?
Nature. I think I follow her on OnlyFans. I think.
But yeah, a couple of things before we go. You can find this dude right down here, East Bay at East Bay Comics on Instagram, and you can find that dude there, Nerds Pub on Instagram at the Nerds Pub, and give them both a follow. I'll give you their addresses if you want to follow them in real life.
Yeah, it's all good.
But mind you that both of them will seduce you and then hurt you.
Yes. Maybe not in that order, but it might be opposite. I might hurt you by seducing.
Sorry, Smokey. Yeah, I don't know who Nature Girl is. Pick up Monsters, another game. Thank you so much. And we did break down Monsters. We're gonna reread this. We're gonna do book club for this. Yeah. I've already decided it's gonna be towards the end of the year because this needs winter weather to kind of snuggle up with and then cry with.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not.
I'm gonna read it again. I think it's gonna be like my 4th or 5th read already.
It's such a great book. A couple other things. What do we got next Wednesday? This Wednesday I'm off. I'm not going to be doing any selling this week. I had that big sale on Grails this past Wednesday, and I deserve to take a little time off for rest, relaxation, and video editing. Next Sunday, we'll be back here on SunDAVE Sitdown. I don't know what we're going to be doing yet, but I'm sure it's going to be fun. April 22nd and 23rd. Mark your fucking calendars.
Already marked.
It is West Coast Avengers, Devenger Con. And there is going to be 2 days of selling and talking about comics. We'll do some type of SunDAVE sit-down thing to close it out. But I'm gonna break up the sales with doing, panel discussions or something like that, because this channel's not just about selling comics. It's about loving them, and maybe sometimes loving them too much that the pages get stuck together.
That's what Clean and Press is for. I thought
exactly.
That's why people submitted for those.
That's right.
East is a busy man, so come here and stroke his beard for 3 hours is a big ask. Not when I'm asking him, because we all have beards to stroke.
Yeah, that's right. They know my stripe here.
Yeah. Anything else that you two guys want to plug or want to say or anything like that?
Just no. Thank you again for having me on. This
is
huge third or fourth time I've been on this channel, and every time it's just so dope and so fun. And we're just regular friends in real life, so it's just so seamless and easy with you, right? And just to be able to talk to somebody who gets it, right, and to everyone in the chat and to Nick, right, people who just get it. And we can sit on Instagram all day long and sell books and know this little factoid and that little factoid, but I think to actually sit down and break things down is really cool. And for people in the chat who are sitting here listening to breakdowns of things are really cool, and just understanding those things and wanting to learn more. And it's really dope, man. And learning about creators, right? And that's the main thing with this whole thing. That's what keeps these things going, is us, the readers, and the creators, right? The MCU sure has a little bit to do with it, but really respecting the creators for what they're doing, writing, drawing, inking, lettering, all these different things. So I just appreciate all you guys coming out and hanging out with us. And Dave, always love you, and you know that. And Nick, I love you so much, man.
I was so pumped to hear that you were gonna be on here too. So
Yeah,
I love hearing people's perspectives. When we all three read the same thing and all three had different perspectives,
right?
Perspectives brought to the show, and a lot of different good ideas, a lot of different good points, stuff I had completely missed that you guys picked up, and things I had never even thought about with this book, and I read it plenty. So
Sure.
That's why I love these sit downs. I think it's so important to hear everyone's perspective on things that we all enjoy.
Yeah.
And so we can kind of like pick up a little bit better perspective of each other as people. So I appreciate you so much for having me on here, and I appreciate the chat for listening. So,
well, it's the word gets thrown around a lot about community, but this is truly my end goal for this channel, is just to create this place that we can come to, whether it's in the chat, whether it's on the screen, whatever on the replay, so that we can all talk about comics in the way that we all take them in. And like you said, Angel, to talk about the people that created them, to give them the spotlight, to give a spotlight to friends of mine and people that want to talk about comics, and and let me ramble on every once in a while. Every once in a while, another person joins the stream that looks like me, but it's not me.
Yeah.
But hey, that's a different story. But I appreciate everybody that hung around tonight. I appreciate you guys so much for taking your time to be on this. And Nick, I know it's a little bit later where you are right now, but thanks for staying up. I know you're a little bit of a night owl, so
yeah, that's all good. I had a blast and stay up for anything else. So
awesome. Well, thank you once again. This has been another great edition of the Sunday Dave Vengers Book Club, and I'll you guys stick around. We'll chat a little bit, but I'll bring everybody. I'll close everybody out the way we brought everybody in, and that's a little bit of this.
West Coast Avengers. West Coast Avengers.